Hello and welcome. I am so glad you're here. I'm thrilled I've made it too, quite honestly. And thankfully, I'm not alone today. I have other wonderful people who are going to help me talk about pacing and editing and all flow and all the good things. So to help me do that today, guess who stopped by? It is the wonderful, the fantastic, the highly talented Laura. Woo! And guess who's here? I was absolutely surprised. It is a fantastic delight to have truly my sister from another mister, Charlie. Woo!
Hi.
And then you know him. I love him. We've been friends. Well, actually, we've only been friends for 10, 12 years out of the last almost 40. But Tom, the technical producer. Yay! No, we've technically been sort of friends / frenemies longer, but adolescence was weird. So, anyhow,
I mean, we signed a treaty.
We did. That was the
end of active aggressions.
Yeah, let's see. So I think you were 13, so I was 16 when we signed a treaty. Our little sister witnessed it. An end to aggressions, and it was only after that then we found that we agreed on many things, mostly how absolutely bonkers our parents were. It is the cornerstone of our relationship. Can you believe these adults? All right, so we're in our 30s and we're still doing that, but anyhow.
I would say, look, I'm only so grown up. Do you want to hear my truly ADHD thought I had right before we started the show?
What you got? Because we were definitely having an ADHD support group back here.
Opening this bag
upside down.
Yes, but if you open it upside down so that all the delicious flavor powder gets redistributed, because they sink to the bottom.
Okay.
But when you open this, it just smells just like our dachshund. No, not the plain, the barbecue.
The barbecue chicharrones, pork rinds.
Yes, it's
smell like little red smoothie dachshund.
Yes.
Now I'm gonna have to come over there and smell it during one of the breaks. I miss my sweet baby.
Oh, I was not expecting that. I don't remember that. Apparently, my brain not working so great.
Although their paws still smell like Fritos.
Yes.
That is something all dachshunds actually are susceptible to.
And that's probably in part why, because I'm sure they use Tarula yeast.
Because yes, dachshund paws are susceptible to a particular strain of foot fungus that smells like Doritos or Frito chips, and you know it if you've ever had. Throwing that out there.
Y'all didn't know you were coming for this conversation.
No.
All I know is I can hear Mushu in the back of my head. I love that corn chip smell.
But I mean, I feel like this is also what who was it we were on Saturday?
Michael C.B. Chen.
Michael. I kept wanting to say Charlie. It's not Charlie Chen.
No.
My name is Paul.
Yes. But because I'm looking at Michael as Gloria at the beginning start talking, you can tell Michael has not warned anyone else on this panel. But Michael is well aware of what happens when Gloria and Tom show up to the same show. And how this is going to go. And he's just I'm just going to sit back, relax, and watch this. Who knows what happens next?
Particularly as we were both already exhausted. It was the end of the day, and so there were hardly any filters that we had left running in our brain.
And there's Zara just chiming in.
I know.
I watched that stream. It was a blast.
It was wild, wasn't it?
But did Michael not just sort of sit back and relax and just go on?
Mhm.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Sprint? What?
Yeah, I'm
Um,
like, are we
Mer-
not friends?
Yeah, well, he could actually he could pull a sprint out of nowhere, but he could not bring because he had not even planned on having a what do you
Riddles?
call it?
His riddles thing?
Yeah, a riddle. He was like, nah, I know them.
Even though he had told me backstage right before that he had written at least one riddle that day. And then when he's like, no, there's no riddles today. And I was like, okay. I don't know when Michael's pulling, but I'm definitely here for the ride.
He wanted the show.
Mm-hmm. It was
I mean,
the
it's a
Gloria
long
and Tom
24
show.
hours.
Some people yearn for that podcast that we took down. We used to have a podcast called The Gloria and Tom Show many years ago, like almost 15 years ago now.
Nice.
Yeah.
It was only available on iTunes. Oh, yes.
Exclusive.
Mostly because we were too lazy to post it anywhere else.
I mean, the good news is it was probably available other places because most podcatchers that launched after iTunes put it in just scraped
Yes.
the iTunes database.
We
And
did find it a couple
that to this day. I can think of 3 prominent podcatchers that exist in the world that in their FAQ of how to submit your podcast, they say add it to the Apple Podcast.
Yeah.
We'll find you. And I'm just like, still, you're just scraping their database. Okay.
Yeah, there was a point where I was a bit ambitious and I was like, hey, maybe we should post it somewhere else because not everybody has access to iTunes or would want to because of their predatory software. And I looked into it and everybody else was like, just put it on iTunes and then send us the link and we'll scrape it. And I was like, okay. Sure, why not?
It's a wild world out there.
We also filmed that podcast somewhere between 11 p.m. and 3 a.m.
It was often after we'd come home from the nightclubs.
Mm.
Like, so what would happen is, because we had a kiosk in the gay nightclub in town. And when the club would close, like we used to go to, say, Waffle House or IHOP, but there got to be a certain point in the mid-2000s here in South Mississippi where there was a more violent element showing up after nightclubs at these, late night restaurants. And people would pull guns. And it's like, I don't want to be eating my waffles or my pancakes and having to worry about ducking. So instead, we just go to my house and I would just cook late night foods. So I'd make pancakes or I'd make carbonara or whatever I could, whatever I had in the house really. And while cooking, Tom would turn on the video or audio recorder and be like, hey, let's just chit chat. And because we would be tired and late at night because we'd been working. We weren't drinking. We'd been working. We would be all silly. And then he'd later edit that into a podcast and upload that. And that was the Gloria and Tom show.
Nice.
Middle of the night, me cooking and Tom chatting and, sometimes helping me chopping or whatever. And us just chit-chatting and eating. So anyway, today's episode is about pacing and flow. Tom, now that you put food in your mouth, would you like to explain your pitch?
Timing.
As someone who is a victim of that so often, no heart. The pitch
By the
for
way,
this
Tom,
one.
Megan definitely has now demanded that we revive this podcast. Soon, Megan. First, I need my thyroid to be working right and my medications to be lined up. And then once I can start cooking again and not die from lack of metabolism, then yes, we will seriously consider it. Go on, Tom.
You can tell right there, Gloria's metabolism needs to recover first.
Metabolism, yeah. My bump on a logism.
That sounds like a really, really bizarre, drag king persona. Hi, I'm Metabolism.
Your sexy account.
Yeah.
Please feel free to use it. If you'd like to acknowledge me in your acknowledgments, that would be cool. But whatever. Please feel free. Have a
So,
drag king, Matt Tablis.
Hashtag normalized drag kings. Anyway.
Amen. Thank you.
yes. So my pitch for this is that we talk so often throughout all of our streams about not reducing impediments to your reader's enjoyment and suspension of disbelief. Like, if you want your reader to read that whole story and have a fun experience, you need to make sure that nothing takes them out of that experience. And at least to me, it's essentially there's a different word for it depending on how big and pulled out of the story you are, or how microscopic you are into the story. But they're all the same thing, really. Whether it's pace or flow, it is making it as easy as possible for your reader to read and enjoy and not think about anything but the images you are describing and the emotions you are creating. And so that's what I want to talk about is, all right, so we talk about pace and flow. How do you create the pace and flow you want? I mean, Laura, of course, is very familiar with the horror thriller style of pacing, which, is not that dissimilar from really most dramatic stories, where it's sort of a roller coaster.
Yeah.
And for it to work properly, you have to have points where the people can relax. If you never relax in a horror story or a dramatic story, people will leave it going, it was okay. Because they never had a comparison of not being revved up to see how much they got revved up in there. Yeah, you can't just keep adrenaline running the whole 2 hours or
If
longer.
your adrenaline is always here and then it's like, okay, climax, instead of like here and then climax, like it's definitely better to have a varying roller coaster so that they can feel the difference.
And flow is that at a tiny level of just the actual word to word, sentence to sentence, and paragraph to paragraph sensation. So, to me, the easiest example of flow for everyone to get and understand is sentence length. The shorter your sentences, the faster your reader reads them, the faster the story is moving, the more excited they're going to get. The longer that each sentence gets, the more languid and slow the story is moving. And everyone starts noticing all the daisies in the field out beside them as they're going along in the story. And yeah, that drops the tension. So that then when you start doing these short little sentences again, everyone goes, oh my God, we're going so fast. When are we going to stop? I need a moment to catch my breath.
So my mother just started writing a cozy mystery this weekend.
Mm.
And so I started reading her first chapter. And her sentences are longer than mine. And she's more describing the flowers outside the house because that's what she loves. Obviously, she loves flowers. And so she's describing the flowers. She's describing the teas. So she's taking the time to make the environment more of a comforting character. And it's definitely more cozy mystery instead of my horror drabbles. It's like short sentences, every word counts, knock you in the face. So like there's gonna be death in both, but they have very different pacing and flows to get to the death, and the death has a different purpose.
Yeah, they feel so different. And your readers will comment on how they feel different, but readers don't need to know this. It's a behind the scenes magic trick. Good magic, no one notices the actual trick going on. They don't even care. They just like how much they enjoyed it.
And in visual media, I know that I'm just trying to find excuses to talk about everyone's favorite gay pirate show, but one of the things that makes Our Flag Means Death work the way as well as it does is it understands the pacing that it needs to have. We meet our characters in this just almost parody world of pirates when we first meet Steed for the first time, and it's silly, and you start feeling like you're going to exist in one world, and then we go off into the real world, and it knows how to go back and forth between those frenetic action sequences with the word that I can't say on Glory's channel so it doesn't get demonetized, but when they are pantomiming terror for the sake of fooling people into thinking something worse will happen to them, or when it just needs to just slow down and almost stop.
Versus the real surprise and shock. If you watch that, you will have when one of the main characters is just all of a sudden and without ceremony stabbed.
Mm-hmm.
And you're left going, wait, what? No, this is not that kind of show.
Yep.
Main characters don't just die. They don't just get stabbed out of nowhere like the real world. Wait,
where's
what just
my
happened?
plot armor?
And one of the things that's really interesting about the way that they used pacing is pacing also dictates kind of which genre you're in at the time, because when it's comedic, the show is moving fairly quickly and has this kind of pace to the dialogue that you're kind of moving at a good clip. When the action sequences are happening, there's almost always this long pause where we get the establishing shot to see where everything is, where everyone is, and we get to take a breath. And then we go into a different kind of frenetic beat for the action that follows. And it's really fun to see a show that understands how much of its meaning is determined by pacing, by how the story is told, how the story unfolds. It is a... Rowan Ellis, in her wonderful video about it, says, everyone keeps calling this show a slow burn. It's only 10 episodes, and none of them are over an hour long. Like, it feels like it's a slow burn, but we have this entire dynamic series of relationships, because it's not just one character, but because of that use of pacing, because it slows down when we're learning Jim's backstory and what's going on with Jim or any of the other characters, it feels like you're spending hours with them in a good way. When you're not, you get maybe 5-10 minutes of that, and then we move on to another part of the story. But it's using that pacing to make you feel like you're spending more time with various characters and their plot elements than you actually are in reality. And that is just a masterclass in how to do storytelling.
I mean, it reminds me a lot of Firefly, the TV series, that when you hear people talk about it, you think, oh, okay, so this was like a 2 or 3 season series, versus it was just, most people originally only watched, like, what was it, 8 episodes?
Yep.
Yeah.
And then there was, 3, I think, episodes that were unreleased.
Yeah, I was like, I want to say.
And then
like
watched it out of order also.
Yeah.
And then watched it out of order.
Released out of order.
But it's amazing how much story you can actually put into an episode if you are thinking about it. You don't need to spend a lot of time on any character to have a lot of character growth and change and development. And that is the same trick that Our Flag Means Death is using. Of these scenes are not as long as people think, but they are done in such a lackadaisical phrasing and speech pattern that people think they go by either very slowly or very quick, but not their true to life time frame.
Also, this show does something that a lot of writers need to learn, especially in prose, the very clever use of montage to show the flow of how a character develops from point A to point B. Like, honestly, one good montage could have fixed a lot of the sins of the last season of Game of Thrones. But we went straight from, I'm Daenerys and I'm going to save the world, to, I am the murder dragon queen of all ages. Just clip. A montage of watching her just distraught and getting to see that internal change visually over maybe a couple days, you know, see like clips of her arguing with the generals and da 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 da. And even if we don't get to follow along with her and get to understand why these emotions are happening or all of the details, that flow, that connective tissue from person we saw in scene A and person we see in scene C after the montage it justifies that character change, that arc, that difference between the two. And that's so vitally important, because sometimes you don't have to spend 6 books explaining why a character became the way that they did.
So Death Note does this as well. When the main character, episode 1, first scene, basically finds a notebook where if you write somebody's name in it, they die. And they're like, who the heck would use this? And then like the first episode is him like figuring out like, does this work on criminals? And then like the whole, oh my gosh, I killed somebody. And then the next episode is like pages of people that he's murdered. But we have a little bit of a montage of, oh my gosh, what have I done? Oh my gosh, like all these people are getting away with it anyway. What is my sense of justice? And some people, including one of my friends, is like that montage needed to be longer to have that complete reversal of I'm a murderer to I'm gonna be like the best murderer ever.
Well, no. From being a goody two shoes.
Yes.
You know, moral sophist.
Studying law in school.
To a ends justify the means. You know, mentality at the most extreme possible.
Mm-hmm. So they do have a montage. Sometimes I think it could be a longer montage just to delve into that pacing. We don't need a whole season of the switch of the character because we got to get into the whole cat and mouse.
Because just to stay in anime for a second, the exact opposite of that is like pick a season of Dragon Ball Z. Where we're going to take like 9 episodes to do one move of the arm.
One power up.
Like one power up is going to take
No, we're going to take an entire season to do one power up.
Yeah.
I've never entirely forgiven them for that whole Frieza arc.
Yeah, the whole Frieza arc. Oh my goodness. Yeah.
Where I only know it because it was a literal month. A literal month that you just heard one character, half the show, every episode screaming. And it was a different episode every day.
See, that could have been a montage. Because I bring this up because my biggest problem in my writing is I write a lot of more adventure style fiction, and while that can benefit from being roller coastery, it's important to remember that a roller coaster has to slow down periodically as you go up the next hill, so that you get that thrill from the next, down junction. And a lot of my early drafts are just running. It's just, okay, craziness, run, rah! And then you get to the end and it's just exhausting. And so realizing where to put in those moments where things have to slow down, where you have to take a beat, realizing when you are being maybe a little bit too self-indulgent with this. There's an entire chapter in one of my books that'll be coming out later that takes place in about a 5-minute period of time. It's just one person grappling with a thing that happened, and it slows the story down. And that is kind of the point of it. Everything has been going so madcap, so crazy. And this is the moment where the character really has to decide. This is that moment of decision. There is no going back from the decision that they are about to make. Once they've done this, they have done this, and it could destroy everything, including their friends, like everything. And so the entire story just comes to a stop, and we're just there in the main character's thought process, trying to figure out, is it worth the risk? Is it? And it's one of my favorite chapters in the book because it's so breathless, because you can almost the way the text is written, in the pacing of the text, get a feel of his breath getting caught in his chest. Like he's not breathing. He's not coping with this well. And it's hopefully will, for people that read it, give you that moment of, oh crap, when all the world falls away and it's just you and the choice. What do you do next? But the story needs to have that. And it's oddly enough the one chapter no one has ever said anything bad about in the entire book. Though it feels so indulgent to let a character have this much time. But it's not only a pivotal point for that book. This is the moment where the entire series turns. Like this is, it's such an important moment that, I've actually gotten notes that maybe a couple other chapters should be stretched out like that. Like they should be like that too, to really give the sense of gravity, because that's what a slow scene does. It says, hey y'all, this is important. That's why we're going through this step by step by step. And if you're not giving yourself the chance to have those moments of importance, your readers will miss them if it's treated like any other decision that a character makes.
It reminds me of the steady incline up the roller coaster. It's slow, but it is building tension. It is building dread. It is building suspense. The higher it goes, the farther you know you're going to fall. And just so powerful. Like that is the scariest part of any roller coaster, I think, is the steady incline at the beginning. That's when you are like, why did I get on this in the first place? Please let me off. And sometimes I actually stop you at the top and you can stare down your decision in the face and be like, I made a mistake. I can't get off. So like, I find that is super impactful. Like the whole Alfred Hitchcock thing of surprise versus suspense. Like, there's a bomb under the table. Something is going to go down. And just that build up, that slow build up has such a big payoff versus just a flash in the pan jump scare.
That actually was something I was thinking about last week on something, maybe last week's show. We were talking about I can't remember any of it right now. I just remember, when I brought up the guy who edits for, we were talking about reality television. And I was mentioning the video that they, did an interview and they're talking with the guy who edits, Curb Your Enthusiasm, but he also edits stuff like ER and other things. And I didn't get to mention, but I thought it was a fascinating concept he wrote and said in there, which is often when you see a joke that isn't very good in, Curb Your Enthusiasm or another show, it may not be that the punchline isn't very good. It may be that your setup isn't big enough. The problem might just be that there's not a big enough start to this for the punchline to hit hard enough for it to have had time to build up, to get that suspense, for you to wonder what is the actual punchline going to be, for it to give you that surprise and shock.
You don't care enough about the character yet for the punchline to matter.
Yeah. Again, it's the same thing Seinfeld would often pull. They would keep building up this premise, and you're not entirely sure where that premise is going. The punchline, if you told it at the beginning, people would go, okay. But in the story, there's so much buildup to it that by the time the punchline hits, most people will laugh because there's so much tension built up.
Mm-hmm.
And there are also tropes that once you see them, you realize that they're the substitute for that buildup. It's why if I see a horror movie and they're like, and they have a child, I'm not watching your movie. you've just telegraphed to me, I'm not going to spend any time on character development, getting you to care about these people, and we're hoping that maybe they don't die or whatever the bad thing is that your story is about. You're just trying to trigger my response of, but the child, save the child. And that really is, in a lot of cases, just that telegraph of, we're not going to give you character development. We're not even going to really give you characters that you care about. We're going to have stock mom, stock dad, maybe some stock brothers and sisters, but really, we're worried about the kid.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the difference between like the first Poltergeist movie and the ones that come after it. The first one, the whole family is developed, the whole situation is developed, and in the other ones, it's, oh, won't someone please think of the children? Poor Carol Ann, poor Carol Ann. There's no, all of the characters are interchangeable.
But I mean, it's also the reason why people used to, especially in the past and sort of now, comment about why is everyone more attractive in movies than in real life. And it's because what we call attractiveness is in part human instinctiveness to care about this person.
Mm-hmm.
The more attractive someone is, the more we want to see them survive.
Mm-hmm.
That is just a human instinct. So as a shortcut, so they don't have to do as much development in, a story that's going to be 90 minutes to 2 hours, and usually has some action in there, and there's, they can only do so much story development. They will, make sure they have attractive people, versus Kevin Smith never heard this, and so just has his characters talk till you understand them. Attractiveness be damned. He's going to have them talk till you start empathizing, or you leave.
You're so not wrong about that.
It's true.
But as writers, that is our only tool, though, is as Kevin Smith, which is we have to get our characters to talk, show themselves for who they are, and through their actions get the reader to care about them, or not. You do not want your readers to empathize too strongly if you have an actual villain. Maggie,
kill the pretty people, save the dog.
You could take your own advice sometimes too.
Oh my God.
But in a way, though, this is why the John Wick franchise actually worked. Is they knew they weren't going to have enough time to get us to care about John. So we literally care about the puppy. Like, how could you do that to that poor dog? And then we learn about John through course of the 3 films and start actually developing. Feels like, just leave John. If you would just leave John alone, y'all'd stop dying. Like, this is all on y'all now. Just leave him alone. Just leave him alone.
You're not wrong.
Even the boogeyman is scared of this guy. Like,
yeah.
That was a great storytelling moment. That whole tale of the Russian telling his son, like, this guy is who you would hire to kill the boogeyman, and like, oh my gosh, that just set up the tension so well without showing gunfights and stuff. But that slow moment built up the tension so much, and it was just, mwah, it was beautiful.
And again, we see more through just everyone else's reaction to John.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have to have John prove it. We can simply show the character's reactions from prior experience to go, oh, this is the type of person John is.
Mm-hmm.
And discussing pacing, I can't remember if it's the second or the third movie, but when he's in the subway train car and he has to fight with Common, that is the most tense. And most of it is just them sitting opposite each other, mean mugging. Like, there is very little actual action.
I was surprised. I'm like,
up to that.
Remember, Tom? I was screaming at the screen, "Do something! Anything! Move! Walk around!"
Because they've already established this like samurai nature to both of them. Like, when one of them strikes, whatever they strike dies. Like, we've gotten that, and you're just waiting. Like, I don't know who's going to move first, but whoever moves first, the other person's going to get it, and it's just so tense just watching them stare off.
I love those movements in samurai movies, and just sometimes they do in anime as well, where it's like, okay, they have the standoff, the sun is going down, and the moment the light disappears on the horizon, it's the draw, and it's like, oh, the build up and the eyes and just the one hit, like, oh, it's so beautiful. I love it.
And I know
really
people
building up that tension, but also, being aware that you can only build it up so far.
Yep.
And after a certain point of tension buildup, it just becomes noise. And so you have to be careful, like how long you hold it.
And to keep using TV for an example, this is Star Trek Discovery's problem. Is they set up these huge, like, the universe is going to end problems, but we're not going to deal with it until just before the end of the season, and we're going to do a bunch of other stuff before that, but be afraid because the whole world's ending, the universe is ending, but we're not going to actually deal with it now, because there's this whole other thing that we got to do first, but the world is ending! Like, I don't care anymore. I let it end.
And again, that's kind of what we saw with Picard as well.
Yeah.
Where we had this huge buildup, and then they essentially say shortly before the second season begins, "Oh, don't worry about any of that stuff or any of those loose ends. We're not going to really touch those again." And it's like, wait, what? You built up this universe around this story concept.
Yep, everybody hated that. Reboot. Literal reboot.
I watched a video recently by Hello Future Me, and it was about subplots versus side quests. And I thought that was a really cool way to put it. Like, is this chapter a side quest that isn't going to do anything to increase your character development, increase your, like, get you along the plot? Is it just a random side quest collecting pine cones to kill King Dragon? Or is it a subplot that is woven through and increasing and moving things along and developing things, and is actually not just I could cut this chapter and nothing would change?
This is one of the things that I love about indie publishing, because one of my favorite lit RPG series, they write the whole book, and then when they find a side quest, it literally gets spun off of as a novella on the side. So the novella tells you this story, these chapters take place between chapter this and chapter this of this other book.
Fanfics do that too. They're like, this is chapter 29.5. This is what happened way back then, and let me just expand it for you.
Because that's kind of what got that Instagrammer so all of a sudden viral with her McGonagall at funerals.
Yes. Oh my God, I love
her. So good.
So good.
I found her on Instagram, and I'm following her, and she's like, I did not expect any of this.
You found her?
I found her on TikTok.
You found her on Instagram, Tom? Did you find her? Because I'm the one who sent her to you multiple times. Cite your sources.
I thought you sent me someone else's one of her TikToks.
Do you know how many times you say this?
Oh, I'm
look, ADHD.
Please, work on this, Tom. This is what we don't like about white males.
Or everyone, Glory. Or everyone.
I don't know. I can forgive many people of color of like, you're stressed. You're dealing with like societal oppression. I'll forgive you, but you, sir, you read.
Oh, I'm not stressed at all. Fuck you.
Tom, you are the one who doctors listen to and look forward to seeing. I am not the one. Guess what? White privilege is not as privileged as we want to think, but still it's something.
Yes. Keep going. This is why I'm here.
This is the conversations we normally have privately, but neither of us has had like adequate rest in like months.
Yeah.
And it's a high ADHD day, low filter day. So hope you understand that we still love each other. But yes, we can be merciless to each other.
It's why we send each other and in the Instagram chat group occasional videos of munchkin cats fighting with each other.
Yeah, have you ever seen them? They never get close enough to actually smack each other, and yet they act like they've made contact. It's adorable, but it is hilarious.
It is the ultimate art of shadow boxing.
Yeah. Hello, sweet baby.
Oh, look at his eyebrows now.
King. He is my Muppet King. So adorable. But I mean, like, we kind of knew we were going to be this way today because for today's practice exercise, we have picked one of our mother's articles that, yes, technically I did edit when I was, 12, 14?
Yeah, something like that.
Let me see, 1993. So I was 14. This is one of a copy of my mother's like her portfolio, and this particular one, she would not take my edits. So just for the record, our stepfather said that I was welcome to any and all of my mother's intellectual property. He was never going to do anything with it, and he really felt like it was, by rights mine anyway, since I was the one who'd worked so closely with her, and we published a book together, and so on. So a long time ago when she died, he was like, yeah, you can do whatever you want with it. Have fun. I have no intention of ever doing anything. Best of luck. So we thought, because sometimes, like Stephen King wasn't entirely wrong when he talks about kill your darlings. He doesn't mean kill every character you like just out of hand. Like if you like them, then they must die. He does not.
That's what George R.R. Martin means by
Yeah. Okay. But that's a totally different. Anyway.
George has his own problems.
Yeah. George doesn't actually
That's
like
long established, and George admits to.
Yeah. So anyhow, but what I think at least Stephen King was meaning is don't be precious about your writing. Once you write it, you then need to look at it as clay you mold rather than, oh, but I'm so emotionally attached to this line or this character or whatever that you need to So one of the things I do when I'm writing, when I'm editing versus writing, is after I write it, I have to give the written word, that art, whatever I've written, at least a little time for me to emotionally detach from it. The next hour, I cannot jump into editing. I'm still too attached. However, thankfully, it turns out I have ADHD, and I'm like a cat with no object permanence. So you give me a couple days, and I totally forget that it exists. And then when I go back to read it, it's not like it doesn't feel as personal when I'm editing. However, I understand that not everybody feels that way about their work. And so we thought to practice the skills we want to talk about with editing for pacing and flow, it might be easier to practice on our mother's article. For the record, she's been dead 10 years. The only people she's going to haunt is us. You're totally safe.
And
so
just know, we do love her.
Oh, we absolutely love her.
Even though we have thought this about her writings.
This is literally this article, which I was helping her edit it. It was like, because she would not take any of my editing advice. And this was specifically having to do with pacing and flow. Like, this is one of the top 5 articles that Tom and I have not stopped talking about in 25 years that has driven us nuts about it. There's a couple other ones. You may see them later one day. But anyhow, what I did do is I posted the link to this document so that everybody can make a copy of it for themselves, and then you edit your own copy. Okay? So be sure to click the link and at least add it to your Google Doc. You don't have to edit it right now, but at least click the link. If you are watching this later, we will have the link posted either in the description or in the comments. I'm not sure. Yes, I'm winging it. But please go ahead and click on it and make yourself a copy so you have a copy you can fully edit. I do have the instructions in the document of how to do that, just in case you're new to Google Docs. You can conversely, if you just want to make your copy and then literally highlight the whole thing, copy and paste it into your favorite version of a word processing software, that's fine too. You do you. I don't care. This is just so that you have her article so that you can edit it. Now, frankly, you can edit it however you want. The woman's dead. And we talked about it. If Mom were alive right now, what would she think of this exercise? And we both really think that she would be very interested in everybody's take on it.
She wasn't that precious.
Yeah, she really wasn't that precious. Although in the moment, like partly because she was doing a 1 week workaround for these articles for the student newspaper at Ole Miss. That's a little, again, our family needs a little time to get that emotional space.
And she was definitely stressed at the time.
Oh God.
So,
our father was a nightmare to be married.
Yeah.
Almost.
So letting go in the moment.
Nah.
But yeah, after a month or two, even she's like, okay, yeah, I see what you mean about. Ooh.
So what happened was when she knew she really was not likely to survive, one of the things that she did with her last bit of energy a couple months before she passed away is she took a jump drive and she copied onto the jump drive everything she wanted to give to me. She copied every article she'd ever written. She also copied, 10 years of emails about me as well as her other two children. Essentially, these were letters to her friends and their replies back about, her worries about her children. I honestly had no idea she cared that much, to be perfectly honest, because she was a rather stoic person. She was not very emotional with us, but it turns out she talked about us constantly to all her friends. So they were absolutely surprised that we were like, this is not the mother that we had. We don't know who you're talking about, but that is not our mom. And they're like, oh, no, but it is. It's just da-da-da. But anyway, she also copied onto this jump drive, an incredible amount of legal templates, of legal documents that for everything she could ever imagine I or her other children would need. And then she put it in one of her purses. And a few months later said, truly on her deathbed, was go through my purses and anything you find you can keep. But tell me what you find. So she was literally sitting in her bed while I was going through every handbag and purse and backpack she owned. And, throwing out a couple apple cores. Thanks, Mom. But also keeping all the money I found in there and throwing away the old candy because old ladies are old ladies. There was some real fuzzy mints in there, y'all. Oh, no. And then I found the jump drive and she's like, oh, keep that. I made that for you. And Gene, our stepfather, agreed. Yes, I was, since Mom made that for me and wanted and told me to have it and gave it to me while she was still alive, that I could have all her IP, all her intellectual property. And so this is part of that. This is pretty much the only thing I got from Mom, that and a whole bunch of craft stuff that she never opened, ancient knitting needles, y'all. And yarn, ancient yarn from the 60s. It was a rough time. So, yeah. But so this is all I got from her. Punishment so this yarn. Is part of my inheritance that I am now sharing with you. I hope you will enjoy it. But I want you to understand, if you want to actually do more than just an editing, a pacing, and flow, you are welcome to. Our mother would have still been very fascinated with anybody taking this idea of the Easter Bunny and Harvey the Bunny being Pukas, which if you go look up Pukas, by the way, she misspelled it. Apparently the Irish they spell it with an H. Anyway, which Mom and I actually discussed quite a bit later. But this is, so we just want you to know, this is something we're sharing with you out of love. It is, critique and editing is something that in our family is a symbol of love, not a symbol of you're not good enough for my love, which is the impression I've gotten from a lot of writers they feel like editing and critique is a sign that you're not good enough to be fully loved or something like that. And I'm like, what? I cannot relate. But it makes me sad to think that people feel this way. Because when you're trying to help somebody,
to help them reach their potential that you can see in them,
right? You're trying to help them craft their art in a way that more people can then enjoy, but without taking away their voice. Without taking away their creative voice. You're still trying to retain their voice and retain their core concepts, but you're polishing it. Really, you're just helping polish. And polishing does not diminish or say, oh, you're not good enough till you shine right. That is not what love is. If you feel that way, that's not love. True love, any kind of love that is true, is unconditional. And it's I don't care if you're all banged up and matted and whatever, you're still absolutely lovable and I love you. But while we're here, maybe I could take a chamois to you. So I just want to make that clear because we've gotten so much feedback over the decades from other writers that they feel like they're not good enough when we edit or when anyone edits them. It's not like just ours, although because our family feels that editing is an act of love we do for each other, we can be rather unfiltered. So, hey, look, at least we're talking about our mom's stuff and not your stuff, okay? Because we have had people like feel a little too vulnerable, and we didn't mean anyone to feel that way. That's why we chose moms, because we also thought if we had used one of our writings, people might feel like, oh, but they're alive and I don't want them to feel that I don't love them or that they're not good enough. So we're like, hey, let's use a dead ladies that I happen to, own the IP to. And who would have welcomed this? Because as I said, she felt that editing was an act of love, that if you were willing to take the time to edit her work, you must love her a lot.
And I mean, I think some of y'all may have heard our stories about being in photography and people left the class, like they withdrew. Just hearing us critique each other's work. Like we didn't critique anyone else's, we just were critiquing each other because we knew, how the other one would take it.
Right. We knew that the other one felt like this is how you're going to publicly display your love to me, by publicly critiquing my photography, and then I will publicly critique your photography. So the world will know how much we love each other. That while we bicker and we're sassy to each other, we're like, excuse me, don't be such a white male on the street to me right now. That it is absolutely, there is like a diamond thread, an unbreakable connection that we will always love each other, even when, we're ticked off with each other, the love doesn't change. And that is not how it was interpreted by the majority of the rest of our class, which were like, oh my God, they wrecked each other. I can't be in this class and witness this. And it's like,
the slaughter,
right? Like, what the hell?
Yeah, versus but also on the other hand, a lot of them were young, okay? In part it is that, these were kids, barely out of high school. And so they hadn't yet developed a lot of the skills to recognize that, when we are critiquing, we are not making personal attacks about the person who created the, what we're discussing. We are literally just discussing the merits of whatever that piece is we are looking at. Our feelings about the person who made it are not involved. But a lot of them, on the other hand, they take any critique about anything they make as personal, and it's like, well, how do you critique them?
I think that's partly because they're looking for personal validation through their creative work, and I absolutely understand that. I experienced that as myself. I love it when people praise my writing. I definitely feel good about my effort was not in vain. But the critique, when people critique mine, I don't feel like I am less worthy of love. I feel like, oh, there was more to work on this creative piece than I realized. And more of sometimes, a few times, I have been surprised of how blind I was in a certain area about this that somebody has opened my eyes to. And that's where I'm like,
shifts.
Right? And that is where, but again, it's not that I felt that they were saying you're less lovable or you're not as lovable as you could be, but rather it was more like, oh my God, I've been blind for years and nobody pointed it out. Why did someone say before?
I mean, look, if you've never seen it, we both highly recommend go watch Mike Tyson's off-Broadway one-person show.
With subtitles. You're going to need the subtitles.
With subtitles. It is so much better than you would ever guess. It is, it helps, look, I'm going to just sound like that person. I don't care. You can tell how many Jewish people he grew up with and are still friends with and is still very close family friends with, that helped him work on this material. It is wonderful. But because even in there, he makes the joke line about, people, someone finally went, in his 30s. I have a hard time understanding you with that lisp. Can you slow down a little bit? I'm not, did you mean this or this? And it's like, I have a list. Why did not anyone tell me in all of my years growing up?
I laughed so hard. I have a list? Nobody told me. Like, oh, Michael, my sweet, sweet Michael. That's because you are the size or larger than a refrigerator, and nobody wants to risk offending a walking refrigerator, sir. Because I think, what was it? Even when he was in 6th or 7th grade, he was like almost 6 feet. Like, y'all, an 11-year-old that's taller than me, that is intimidating because an 11-year-old has 11-year-old impulse control. By that I mean not that much.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want a temper tantrum from an 11-year-old who's like nearly 6 feet. That is, and has not bulked out yet. And then imagine him in high school bulking out. Like, no, I'm not going to mention the list. Like, no, as a teacher though, I would be recommending that he go to speech therapy. But that's a whole nother. But a lot of people failed him who were in authority.
As somebody who was that 6 foot tall kid in 5th grade, yeah. It's amazing the things people don't tell you about yourself just because they're afraid they will get smooshed. Yeah, it's a problem.
So I think 2 things to take away that I've taken away from stuff is I am not my work.
Yeah.
They're not attacking me. And also, people do point things out of love. My mother pulled me aside one day and said, "Do you know you use the word like a lot?" And I was like, "Dang it!" And then I could hear it.
California showing through.
It did. And so I worked on it consciously to take out that Valley girl, and just she loved me, and so she pointed it out so I could work on it, and that means I'm improving because I can see what I can change. Like, even now when I look back on my first published piece, it's like there's so many flaws in it, but that's because I have grown and can now see those flaws. So it's a sign of progress.
Yeah, you can see your journey from, just rereading, your first finished work. And I say that because, like, as a creative, like, when you look back, is your first finished work ever truly finished now? No, of course not. But you know what I'm saying? Like, you can see that space. I recently did that. I was looking back. It's actually the 2 pieces I've posted, like on my coffee, of looking back at what I wrote. Those are both from 2009. And looking back on those stories or vignettes, really, and just seeing like, wow, I did not have a concept of how to use a comma, so I just didn't. And I could really see like the effect of rereading Strunk and White, The Elements of Style, 3 times in the bathroom. It's a great bathroom radio. Because it's so textually, it's so dense that you can just read, in the time it takes one to use the facilities. You're only getting like halfway or a third through, 2/3 through a page, and then you have that time to meditate on it till, the next time you need to spend a little time. So, and I did that 3 times. It took about 18 months. But it, like, in a way that, and I had even graduated from the grammar class at my university, which was considered one of the top 3 hardest courses in the entire university. And I graduated that class with an A. And nevertheless, I still did not feel confident in how to use commas in 2009, versus Strunk and White finally helped me see, oh, this is how I'm supposed to use it. Like, and me having to reread it 3 times, essentially. Of like seeing that journey, it's like, oh, I really see how far I came. Because when you're in this present moment, we all kind of feel like we're almost like a static being. This is how I've always been. When no, this is not how you've always been. No, none of us have always been how we are in this moment. We were different last week, even if it was imperceptible to us, but it's not imperceptible to others, perhaps. And we are certainly dramatically different than how we were 10 years ago or 15 or 20 years ago. So being able to see that, I think, can be quite healing for people to see, oh, all this effort I've done is not in vain. I have made this journey in my writing, even if we're only talking about you've only been trying to really write for a year, still to see that journey, that is, I think, so empowering and motivating for writers, for creatives of any kind, actually. I will get off my soapbox.
Bio break?
Let's have a
Definitely
bio
time
break.
for a bio break. But we did want to make sure everyone knew this going in of this is not, how we edit is not any form of personal judgment. We don't have that as a concept in our minds.
And how can any of us get better as creatives, get better in our finished works is what I mean, in our finished products, if we are not open to extensive editing or polishing? So figure out a way to, deal with your own personal psychology so that you welcome your own edits as well as anyone else's edits who's willing to take the time. Because I promise you, it is an act of love from like 95 to 98% of all human beings who are willing to help you with edits. It is absolutely an act of love because editing is exhausting.
It is. And if they are doing personal attacks, that's not editing.
Oh, absolutely. That's not editing. Go on.
Yeah.
Also, it is perfect if ideally they should be okay with you crying. And just like, there, I promise it wasn't personal. You're like, I know, I don't know, the tears, they must flow, said the writer.
Yeah. Like the first time I got an edit letter from a critique partner, I read it and it was just like, no! So I put it back. And then a couple of days later, I could pull it back out and I was calm and I could read through it and it was okay.
Yeah.
So it's okay to take a break from reading it.
Absolutely. But yes, they are acts of love. And if they are not acts of love or they don't feel like it, maybe ask someone else to see, does this look like an act of love? If you have it in print. But ultimately, I just want to say, like, I who seem to attract so many people with problems. And yet I would say 95 to 98% of all the edits I've received, even from people who maybe have personality disorders, has definitely been acts of love from them.
Oh, since we're about to go,
yeah,
I just figured, I'd finish the poll for this hour. And in the end, it really is that 50-50 split right now about, can you write a good dramatic story without comedic moments?
No.
And it's like, all right, we will see how people feel in hour 3.
Alrighty, so maybe now's a great time to see if you have something to drink or get something to drink. Check your bladder. Is it snack time? I feel like for most of our continent, it's definitely snack time. And we'll see you back here in approximately 10 minutes. Bibbidi beep. Bibbidi beep. Bibbidi beep beep beep. Boom. Come out wherever you are.
So many tabs. I was submitting my only thing to do for work, submitting it to dailies, so
Good job.
that's in.
Hey,
They updated the building so it has new mats so the comper can like make it more dirty, make the dirt blend in more.
I forgot to do the one thing I was planning on doing during the break, which is take another hit in my asthma inhaler. So, give me just a sec.
I've just been sitting here in a stare off with my dog because every time I go to unmute my microphone, she starts barking.
Oh.
So we're having a bit of a stare off right now. I think I'm winning.
Do you think there may be some feedback going on that she can hear that you can't hear?
No, our neighbors are doing stuff.
And by stuff, I know you mean redneck stuff.
I was gonna say more or less satanic. Pick your idea of what side of the fence it's on.
They just brought in a flatbed truck for something, and I don't know what, and I don't want to know.
Platform for Jesus, I assume.
As long as they don't start like crucifying people or burning people at the stake, I'm fine.
You say that now.
No, I actually am concerned that they might start doing it.
It came early! Yay! All my boxes seem to come like 3 days early. But this one came like 4 days early.
Go Canada.
Yeah.
You're blurred, Tom.
You're blurred.
All right, put it right in front of your face. There you go.
Yeah.
So Glory looked through them and read them to me, and all I could think with
Tom
this
taught me everything I know about being a sassy. Okay,
is that if and when it's used, Charlie will be asked to leave the room.
Oh no!
Because Charlie will feel called out by every single one of these cards.
Oh no!
Every single one of them.
Open the box and read one. Just pick one at random so Charlie understands that
these really Oracle cards are, theater tech kids.
Oh no.
They are emo theater tech kids.
I saw them used once on Twitch and I was like, these are pretty potent.
Really? In the year where Bauhaus got back together, you're doing this to me?
Come on.
Black flower fragrance.
Pick another.
What was this one? Just obsession. And this is the phrasing for all of them. It's just here to call out emo kids. Oh yeah, the child I was meant to be. And this is like Charlie's just gonna have to leave the room.
One of them is lies win.
Yeah.
Like, what? I just kept holding up, going, "What does this even mean?" And he's like, "You, my sweet, were a goth. You were a perky goth. You were not an emo kid."
Yeah, I was very much.
That's the problem. Is you're like, "But what language, emo?" And Tom was like, "You were never an emo."
Whenever I or our other sister said any of these phrases.
So both Tom and our little sister were emo kids, and I was the perky goth. Our mother was so upset about all of this, by the way.
Oh no, Carrie!
It's fine. You know what? That just means you have to eat them now. It's like box surprises.
And at a certain point, 2/3 of the way through this deck, I'm like, do I need to make you watch the emo ranch?
Have y'all seen the emo ranch video? I have only made so many people watch this.
Mm-mm.
Like, y'all. This was made back when the internet was young and fresh.
So young and fresh.
It's a bunch of like teenagers, and they mostly teenage boys, and they made this bizarre like video, like it was short, and then one of them eventually stitched them together to make like a 10-minute reel.
Like Letterkenny.
Yes, it was very kind of pre-Letterkenny, because it's so old, and essentially it's these two teenage boys who are trying to dress up like old ranch hands, who are like, yeah, we have an emo ranch. We like to let our emo roam free range.
Oh Lord, I've seen
y'all. And then there's all these teenage boys who are doing like various emo, like, yeah, but you know their first album was better. Like it's y'all. We will do our best to find this video and send you a link so that you two can enjoy the. Do you remember when emo was that?
You said boys roaming freely. All I was thinking is, are they Naruto running?
They should.
I believe there is one that's doing that because they're trying to catch him, and then he gets tangled up. Not really, but he gets kind of tangled in the wiring of the fencing, and then they have to get him out. You know, emo do this sometimes.
It's sort of done in the style of an ostrich farm.
What you have to say is, let's go to the vinyl record store, and they'll all hop in the truck.
As they make clear, they are not a farm. They do not slaughter their emo.
Oh.
Like,
they do not process them.
And then sometimes our emo escapes,
and
we just got to go to coffee shops till we find them, and then we got to and then they are trying to catch an emo kid. Y'all, thank you.
17 minutes.
Yeah, they finally found all the bits and they actually stitched them all together. Y'all, absolutely. And know that, like, I laughed at this many years ago when it first came out, when it was only 6 minutes before they'd added even more from their other videos they made. I laugh with love because, you know, I'm related to emos. It's, you know, but not that I understand them. So I just love them from afar.
Yeah, you're the only person I know of who's ever been like, all right, I have wallowed for 3 weeks. I've gotten nothing from this. I am done wallowing. This is almost a verbatim quote. It's like, you are not emo, Glory. You do not ruminate. And she's like, I ruminate. No, Glory. Your hell would. And it's like, what are you saying? I have a problem being a cow? I'm like, yes. Your hell would be reincarnated as a cow. You're like, but I like being a cow, you know, just eating, chewing all day, sitting around. But yes,
I love nature.
You'd be surrounded by other cows commenting on their grass. And she's like, oh, yes, you're right. That is my hell.
It's like, get away from me. Get away from me, heifer.
Cows do not exist on their own. They are surrounded by other cows, ruminating about what they're chewing.
I don't, yeah.
And she's like, oh, no, you're right. Yeah, no, you are not. You don't ruminate like that.
No.
Every time I hear the word ruminate, I hear the movie quote from Holes. Smell like puke from a mule, been ruminating on asparagus for 3 weeks.
Oh, Lord. That is a rough imagery.
I love that movie.
Oh, Lord. Somebody find a composter fast.
Every time somebody brings up emos and goths, I'm just like, I need to put out the bat signal. If anybody can name to me 3 bands that Eva Ortiz has been in, you're my people. Come, let's chat. Let's chat. You're my people. If you even know who Eva Ortiz is, you're probably still my people. Come on in. Come on in. It's fine. It's fine. We have enough skulls for everyone. There's skulls and red wine galore.
But yeah, save that for later.
So yeah, save it for later. Enjoy and revel in your emo culture. Maybe we'll watch it together in the voice chat tonight. That would be nice. We could have like a viewing in the voice chat. Bless you. Bless you. I'm cutting off your blessings now.
I wish I still had Drew's goth version of Part of Your World. I can't remember all of them. I definitely remember how he would scream and run at the stay when somebody else would sing the line, and you can stay all day in the sun, and he would just like hiss and run into the shadows.
I felt that way too. Of like, no sun, no sun. Why have I been forsaken?
all of a sudden now I'm wondering if the Instagram account Goth Dad, who also does a band, has a goth band, like, do they do a cover of Part of Your World? This does seem like a perfect, goth song.
Because we used to do a lot of open mic nights just to punish people that showed up at open mic nights because, I don't know, fun. And we knew that nothing that we did was worth putting up on a stage, but it entertained us. And the saddest thing was, Drew could really sing. So when he was doing his nightmare renditions of songs, like, you kind of didn't want to stop him because, like, he was talented enough to make you go, okay, well, tell me more. But, like, the words were messed up enough that you're like, but you can shut up now. Can you just do doo-wop for a while? Just scat for me. Like, stop with the words.
Nice.
I hope the candy coating didn't come off the Smarties and stay in any of the books.
Mm-hmm. Megan says, I read an article that said a large percentage of emo kids are actually vitamin D deficient. And that cracked me up because I was vitamin D deficient. I like to point out that, yes, I'm going to talk about my brother's medical history. He also turned out to be vitamin D deficient after he'd been insisting for literally decades he was not.
No, previous tests I wasn't.
Yeah, but I know you. So, here we are in the second hour.
Is that what this is?
It's only going to get more zany. Okay. Now, I can tell y'all all that I have planned, and then y'all can subvert that however you want, because I don't care. So, my plan is to read to you the entire Raid on a Cleveland Warehouse article in its entirety. And ideally, if you already have the document open, you can start putting your comments in now as it is read aloud, because reading out loud what you have written is definitely a very important step to the editing process, because you need to hear it with your own ears. This can be helpful if you have a problem with, like, when you read it, you don't really hear it. Because some people told me that is so. They don't really hear it when they read it out loud, which that's fine. You can, like, ask someone else to do it for you, or depending on the software you're using, many of them actually have a read aloud option, or there's a way to then load it into, what is it, Google Play Books?
Google Books.
Google Books, and Google Books will read it out loud to you. So there are methods for everybody. So I just wanted to actually share that. And that way, y'all could get started on that. But then again, I don't care. I mean,
and I wish Windows had this, but anybody who has a Mac, if you go into your accessibility features, you will see text-to-speech as one of them. You can choose the voice, you can choose the speed at which it reads, and which quick key you use to initiate it. So even if the program you're working in does not have it as part of the suite of tools that it offers, if you're using Mac OS, it is there.
I want to say Word has that option now where it can read out
Word
loud.
has it.
Yeah. But not Windows itself, but Word, the software, the word processing software does have it.
Because there are times when I find an article that I really want to read and I just hit the button and let the computer read it to me while I go make coffee.
Right. So I just wanted to say, like, it is very helpful to read it out loud to yourself, to have other people read it to you while you have the document open, or if you're old school like me, you have it printed out so you can make physical notes with your colored pens and pencil. Don't look at me like that, Laura.
Physical notes?
With Post-it flags?
How dare you come for me? How dare.
With joy.
I know. But, like, for me, with my dyslexia, it is actually easier on my eyes to read a physical printed copy versus to read on the screen for very long, which is why I do have a printer. Like, even if I honestly, I believe if I even was younger than I am, I would still have a physical printer for these times because it is just easier on my eyes to edit printed material than to edit screen. Because like for some people with dyslexia, the print kind of moves on the screen. I don't know how to explain it, but it's because of the eye tracking. Dyslexia is wild, y'all. I don't know what to tell you. So, also, a moment of silence for me. Do you see how tiny this print is? Yes, I got to do this. Okay.
Do you need a lighted magnifier?
You know, I technically. Guess
we
what
would
I
give those
have?
to my mother just to annoy her.
You know how old I am? Like, look. I have a tiny lightsaber.
Yay!
Oh, you're right.
Oh!
This does help a little. I'm just literally holding it up. It really does kind of help a little. All right. Let's see. Cleveland. I was on patrol with the Cleveland police when they got a tip about a big deal going down at a waterfront warehouse. A raid was quickly coordinated among the FBI, DEA, and CPD, Cleveland Police Department. I silently watched in an unlit doorway as everyone got into place. After about 10 minutes, a white 69 VW Bug drove into the warehouse. Then another identical VW drove in. What big deal is made by people who drive 24-year-old cars, I thought, especially in the shape these two were in. Dense, smoking tailpipes, and one was even missing a fender. After both cars were in the warehouse for a while, the police moved in. I waited a moment to see if there was going to be any shooting. There was none. The all clear was given by the police chief. He looked strange, though, as he walked out. There were tears in his eyes. I couldn't figure out what had happened until I saw for myself. It was incredible. As I walked in, there in front of me were two 6-foot-tall white rabbits talking to a DEA agent. "We're pukas, you idiot," one of the creatures was yelling. "Not bunnies. Pukas, got that?" "What the hell is going on here? Guns? Firearms? Geez, someone could have gotten hurt." The officer was called away, and I quickly showed the bunny my press pass. "Patty Fink, Daily Mississippian," I said. "Who, or should I say, what, are you guys dressed up for?" "I'm Harry, the Easter Bunny, and this is my brother, Harvey, the movie star." By the way, Mom made me actually be the interviewer, and she played Harry, the Easter Bunny, and made Tom play Harvey, the bunny.
From the movie.
From the movies. So we actually had to role play this with her, just for the record.
Nice.
Okay, let's see. "What movie did he play in?" I asked. Harvey. You remember the movie called Harvey? Jimmy Stewart played Elwood Dodd, who kind of checked out of reality. Harvey helped him stay out of the loony bin. "Oh yeah, I saw that on late night TV. Wow. And you're the Easter Bunny. I've loved you all my life, but you're a lot taller than I imagined. How tall are you?" I asked. "I'm a 6-foot-tall puka, not a rodent. Got it?" "Well, you look like a bunny to me. Long ears, long front teeth, and might I add, a rather large fluffy tail. What's the difference between a puka and a bunny besides about 5 feet of fluff?" She really was wearing Easter ears, by the way. "You don't know? Listen, sweetie." That is the voice of my mother. "A puka can change into anything he wants. I wasn't always a bunny, you know. When I was young, sometimes I'd be a fairy or a goblin or even a satyr." "So they really existed?" I asked. "Wait a minute, back up. You mean you and Harvey weren't, whatever, always bunnies?" "Didn't I just say that? Pukas change, but boy, the weight fluctuations get you every time. 1 minute you're a 300-pound bunny, the next a quarter-ounce fairy. Talk about yo-yo weight changes. I wrote a book about it. Weight You'll Never Miss by Harvey Pukwitsky. I don't know. You look like you could have used my advice." My mother was so sassy. "Hey, what do you mean? Do I look like a 300-pound ball of fluff?" I screeched. Then I remembered why I was there. All right. I remember it. It was pretty good, too. "So how long have you been a bunny, or should I say, how long will you be one?" "This is it. I took this job as Easter Bunny because it had good hours, decent pay, and the fringes weren't bad either." You get paid? I asked, disappointed. Yeah, sure. You think I do this job gratis? You got to be kidding. It's not easy sneaking into houses, avoiding the cops and the family dog. Wait. Let's back up again. When and how did you become the Easter Bunny? And then we'll get to Harvey, I said, turning in Harvey's direction. Is that a bottle of Boone's Farm apple wine he's chugging? Yeah, that was tough. Yeah, he's got a little problem. We both do, actually. But I go to AA meetings regularly. Harvey's sort of on the wagon from them. You're alcoholics? Recovering alcoholics, if you please. Harry corrected me. Oh, gee, Harry. I didn't want to know that. But all right, let's get back to in your job, Easter bunnying. We had, what is it? I think something must have been cut off in the article. You'll probably see it in the thing. Anyway, sorry, Harry. That was a little before my time. What exactly was your job called? Party puka. There was a whole bunch of us. Some minotaurs, some pans, some this, some that. Whatever they wanted, we became. You can change into anything you want, I asked. Well, that was when I was young. As I said, the weight changes drove me crazy. If you say so, Harry, I tell him. So what else did you and Harvey do before you became the Easter Bunny and you went to Hollywood? We went west to England for a while and became dragons. It was colorful, but the weather was too cold and damp for my arthritis, so we went to the Middle East and got jobs as genies. Hey, that sounds like fun, I offered. Boring. Between openings, then we had our big fight. Harvey blamed me for getting us into the stupid lamps, and I blamed him for not getting us out fast enough. Anyway, to make a long story short, we parted ways. He went to Ireland and joined the Leprechauns. I took the Easter Bunny job that came up around the same time. It's been good for me. What do you like best about being the Easter Bunny, I asked. The red jelly beans. Love them. Also, I love chocolate-covered marshmallows and spicy gumdrops. Hey, what about the Easter eggs, I asked. Oh, those. Harry leaned over and whispered to me, whoever heard of a bunny laying eggs? Do you know where that idea came from? No, I whispered back. Where? I don't either, Harry laughed. But way back then, they had some really weird ideas. Yeah, well, Harry, let's get back to your battle with the bottle. You joined AA, so how are you doing now? It's touch and go a lot, he said. Sometimes I touch the bottle, sometimes I don't. Being a party animal, it wasn't easy going on the wagon. Harvey didn't get into trouble until he became a genie, had to do some between lamp openings. He'd do fine when he was on a job making people rich, building palaces, but then, 3 wishes and it's over. After the genie business ended, he went to Ireland and became a leprechaun until Myron found Harvey's pot of gold. Insisted Harvey grant him 3 wishes, the first being that he be a movie mogul in Hollywood. Harvey negotiated a movie deal with him, and then the rest is history. Give me a break, I groaned. So while Harvey was making movies, you were laying Easter eggs? Okay. What do you do between Easters? It's only once a year. Oh, I live in Florida part of the year. Got a nice condo, work at Disney World. Keeps me busy, gives me a little extra change. The warehouse was quiet now. Most of the police were gone. An FBI agent called me over to report they only found chocolate bunnies, jelly bellies, and marshmallow goo. So I asked Harry, let's get back to this warehouse. Every law enforcement agency in Cleveland searched this place and nothing. Bupkis. What do you mean, bupkis? This is all my stuff. Jelly beans, Easter eggs, chocolate bunnies. You think I just make the stuff up on the spot? Get real. So where does all the candy and toys come from? It's supplied by candy makers, toy manufacturers. Sometimes even Santa gives me an overrun of toys. It's all here in Cleveland because it's so centrally located, he revealed. I see the DEA wants to question you about those black jelly beans. You got a little something extra in there, Harry? Hey, kiddo, you're all right, so I'll let you in on a secret. Watch out for them. Sometimes they're not what they seem. I thought at last I'll get the real story. What are they if not jelly beans? Harry whispered to me, well, sometimes, just sometimes, mind you, for the especially rotten little kids, shh, don't tell anyone. Sometimes I put bugs in them. Aw, Harry, that's not nice. My face cringes at the thought. Well, it's only for the rotten kids, not everyone. So I pass on the secrets of the Easter Bunny to my, where is it? Because it cuts it off here. So, oh, she changed it. So remember, dear readers, what your mother always told you. Only now you know why. Never accept candy from strangers, even if they are large, white, bunny strangers. By the way, I want to point out, here she has handwritten in here, this is my interview with Easter Bunny. Substitute the word turd for bug, and you'll have the way I wrote it first. But Albert, that's our father, her husband, said this was socially unacceptable in the South, so. Okay. So there it is. Everybody's muted.
I just got a message from work.
Oh, yeah.
Somebody talking to me very off topic.
All right, so here, though, is something for writers to remember from what they just heard. And this is, again, one of the difficulties of editing. You got to hear this article with the benefit of a professional reader, someone who knows how to put emphasis into lines. Most people will read this fairly monotone in their heads.
Yeah,
Deadpan. And so that is where our issue with some of the pacing and flow comes in.
Also, I notice she repeats herself several paragraphs. Like, more than once, she mentions about where they found work. Like, she mentions Ireland several times, when you only need to mention Harry went to go work with the leprechauns in Ireland one time. So I'd honestly, I'd recommend taking that whole first mention of it and not doing it until later when she's ready to actually expound on that, of where they split. It's not necessary to mention multiple times he went to Ireland. And that would actually help trim down this very long article.
Just because it took me too long to get this thought out of my head, I'm still going to say it. This is one of the reasons why, if you can use either the Google Reader or they're starting to do this with the Amazon, I'm not going to say her name so I don't turn on everybody's devices, or with Siri, they've started using building a neural network to try to interpret the text so that it can infer from the way something is written what tone it should be delivered in. Mm-hmm. And especially with the Amazon one that shall not be named so it doesn't go off in everybody's houses. And with Siri, that is very much intended to help people who are vision impaired. So it works really, really hard to do that. This can be very helpful in seeing your pacing issues, because it will sometimes try to get overly excited. You will hear the robot start reading your text really overly excited when you're not intending it to be read that way, because it's seen, a bunch of short sentences, a bunch of tight, small words, very punchy punctuation. Oh, I should be getting excited. This should be getting ramped up. I should be getting some emotion in my voice. And you can see when you're not doing what you want to do in your text really, really, really easily with a lot of that. Or just like mine always likes to say yay instead of yeah, no matter how I spell it, which is so fun because every time it just turns into a surfer dude. And it's a great way to break the tension while you're doing your edits, because all of a sudden the character says, yeah, but the voice goes, yeah. And you're like, okay.
I like it.
I didn't need Keanu to show up right now, but okay.
My sister meant to write, oh, yes, in one of her fan fictions, and instead she wrote, oh, yeah. And so I always go, oh, yeah, to her whenever I see her. And she's like, curses. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so one of the things I noticed reading is, and as you see, so Mom, this was the copy she had left me in that thumb drive that she left. And I could tell that she had finally gone back and edited like some of my notes, such as, you keep mentioning Harry went to Ireland. You only need to mention it once. It's not an integral part of the article. Like, it isn't a major function of the purpose of this article. Presumably, the major function of the article is about a raid on a Cleveland warehouse, and that it turns out the Easter Bunny is not actually a true bunny, but is in fact a magical creature who's been around for thousands of years and is really just doing this as a job gig. Hello, Spence. Like, that's what the article, like, Mom at least had said was about. And I'm like, so why do we keep talking about Harry and his career? Like, what siblings talk about the other one more than themselves?
I mean, truly, this is a side quest.
Yes.
In
versus
the article.
A subplot.
Well, see, what I got from that, and what led me to a little bit of disappointment with the story, is I felt that there was obfuscation going on. So I'm asking about you. Oh, no, let me tell you about this other person.
Yes.
And
no, keep going.
Yeah, it felt a lot like they were trying to cover up. Like, I kept waiting to find out that, like, the black jelly beans are like black tar heroin or something. Like, what?
Yeah,
okay.
See, that was what I thought, was they were black tar heroin. And I said that to Mom of like, what, you can melt them down, inject them? She's like, no, they're supposed to be turds. Like, nobody's going to believe that this, like, hard chiseled, puka is really, who, like, did a stint as a party animal and then, a possibly nefarious genie is, like, now just a happy, hunky little Easter bunny who works on the off season at Disney World.
Who constantly dissembles when asked simple questions. There's nothing shady about that at all.
See, and I tried to point that out to her, but in her mind, she had the bunny Puka as this character. Like, you could almost hear the cigar, but she didn't want to put the cigar in because she felt it would encourage smoking. But you could almost hear this. He's chewing on the cigar like, hey, trust me, kid. Like, this guy is going to put you in human trafficking. Like, that was the vibe I got.
But in her head, she's doing a George Burns impression.
And in my head, it was the guy that tricked Pinocchio onto the boat.
Yes, exactly. Me too. That was the vibe I got. And I was truly like, so what's Harry doing? Is he, like, the other end of this, like, networking it? Like, selling children? What is happening?
That's why Harry stays over on the West Coast.
Right. I was just like, but she just did not see it. So again, that is more of, like, a different kind of editing, which, of course, as I said, everybody is welcome to do. If you really want to play with this article, please absolutely just use it as a practice and have fun with it.
I actually want to disagree with you a little bit. I don't think that that's necessarily always a different kind of editing, because if the pacing and flow of dialogue isn't right, because that's basically what this is the pacing is odd for the dialogue, for what the story is intending to say, that it gave us all the wrong impression of these characters. And so that's where the pacing really matters here.
Everything is at odds.
Yeah. And I also felt like that she cuts in with the description of the DEA agents and so on. The way the dialogue cuts in was very confusing. And again, disrupts the flow. So that also was something, like, as I said, like, if you disagree with me, that's totally fine. And what I would like to encourage you is edit accordingly as you see, because this is meant to be practice. That you can have emotional detachment, because, even the original author is no longer with us, and she would honestly welcome it anyway.
But if it's just bugs, why is the DEA involved?
Like the DEA, seriously.
Like, there would be so many other...
Who reported the warehouse? Was this the competition? Like, the Tooth Fairy did it? Like, I feel like, and I told her this, of like, it seems like there's so much more here than just, any random warehouse gets reported.
And to her credit, there was actually supposed to be a follow-up story. But if I remember right, I think she stopped writing sometime that year for the student newspaper.
Well, they changed editors.
Yeah.
and the new editor didn't want her boomer articles. So they went from an 8-page newspaper that was distributed weekly to a 4-page newspaper that was distributed weekly to a 2-page newspaper because nobody wanted to write for them, because nobody was reading it, because mom's articles, however issues they may have had with pacing and flow, people still looked forward to reading them, so they would pick up the newspaper. So the distribution tanked. Like that's just what happened. And anyway, I just was like, look, boomers are boomers, but at least she wrote something that was interesting, and that, it was usually at least worth your 5 minutes to read the article. And so that is part of it, is she, essentially was not renewed as a columnist.
Okay, complete and total side quest, but can we all start a collab project where like all the mythical beings that deliver presents for various reasons are various like mob bosses in charge of their own like mafioso dens and competing with each other? Because that whole setup is what I was getting from the story.
So yeah, there is actually a setup. So the next article was supposed to be, and this is true, this was the article, and in fact, she and I had been working on it for years. And I may one day find the rest of what she wrote on this, but it's her interview with the Great Pumpkin, as played by Raul Julia, and I get to play Raul Julia as the Great Pumpkin. And she did a full interview of me. She actually did like 4 interviews of me. She kept trying to like, okay, I got more questions, and we just kept, where I'm like, it's South America. I do my best, but I can't get everywhere. There's a lot of pumpkin patches. Did you know there's a lot of pumpkin patches on this planet? There was a whole thing. So, like, and it was like supposed to be this whole series where she interviews all these mythical beings, because she was like the hard-hitting journalist hunting down mythical creatures and finding out where is the disconnect. So she was like, why don't you ever show up for Linus? He's been waiting. They've literally made TV shows about this. And he's like, I only just found out about this boy, Linoleum, whatever his name is. I only just found out about him. I don't go to North America. That is not my district. Like, this whole thing. He's like, this boy need to come down where I live. Pumpkins are from South America. He does this whole thing.
Oh my sweet Lord.
And that was the whole series. Now, if anybody would like to take this on and start interviewing mythical creatures, please feel free. As I said, Mom has passed away. She would absolutely welcome other people to kind of take this and like run with it and have a good time as hard-hitting investigative journalists investigating mythical creatures. Why you like this?
Okay, this would make for a great collab YouTube channel.
Mm-hmm.
Like this, I'm just saying, like today, our hard-hitting report on the Tooth Fairy. Like, I mean, like, and do it like
why you need so many teeth, lady? What you doing? What are you building? A teeth castle? What is happening?
It would be so much fun. I kind of want this. No new projects. No new projects. No new projects. No new projects.
So, like, and this was something that, like, she and I in particular would work on, but also, like, obviously my other siblings would help. And yeah, we talked about, a bunch of creatures, a bunch of, like, different kinds of creatures. Like, she was gonna like find a brownie. Since brownies are supposed to live under people's beds, that's why you put a sock down there to satisfy them. And, you put a sock down under your bed to satisfy them so they don't steal your other things. And you leave cream and crackers for them every once in a while. And they'll, like, keep your house a little bit better organized and a little bit cleaner. And so she was going to, like, hunt down a brownie and interview, of which our little sister was going to play the brownie. Of, why you don't ever want to be seen? Why do you only sweep at night? Like, I need to sleep. Like, why are you like this? Why is your family like this? Can you get in touch with the other brownies and ask them to do this during the day?
Why don't you make me shoes?
Yeah, why don't you make me shoes? Who's making shoes? Yeah, that was her whole thing. Like, she was gonna like, and then the brownie was gonna explain, no, you're thinking of a different kind of fake creature. We don't do shoes. That is a subspecies of brownies that cobbles. And, now they're, really angry and dissatisfied because there's hardly any shoemakers left. And so like they mostly wander in the woods and scream a lot. I don't remember what they were supposed to do. So there was like this whole series that she was going to do, hard-hitting journalism on mythical creatures. Yes. That is why you need to leave out crackers and cream every once in a while, and you need to keep at least one sock under your bed at any given time. And if you need to trade out socks, so be it, but you've got to leave a sock for the brownies, or else, you effed.
They will take everything. They will take your car keys and hide them inside a couch cushion.
Yeah. You ask why I have a sock under my bed at any given time. That is why, so I can keep track of my car keys.
Are you saying, Glory, that your cat was part brownie or just a brownie parading as a cat?
Well, apparently brownies and cats have an interesting history together from my research. Sometimes they get along very well, and sometimes they are at odds. So apparently it depends. But supposedly brownies can momentarily change their appearance like a glamour since they are fae. So they can appear to be a cat as they streak across to run away, to like go outside. If you're trying to sweep under the bed, they'll like run out as a gray streak or as a cat to try to escape while you're sweeping under beds.
Yep, if you see cats moving out of the corners of your eyes and there are no cats in your house or your cats aren't over there, that's supposed to be a sign that you have an infestation.
All right, shall we take another break?
Sure.
I looked at my doggie when I said infestation, and she's like, what did I do?
What did I do? I am
infestation of cuteness.
Have you seen that video of a dachshund owner did of pretend you're on the phone and have a conversation saying all of your dog's favorite words? And this dachshund is so confused by the end of this 1-2 minute conversation, just what is going on? Is this the best day of my life or the worst? I can't tell anymore.
Poor baby. All right. Well, we're going to take a 10-minute break. Now is a wonderful time to, again, if you haven't already, check in with your bladder. Make sure you got something to eat. Can I point out that I believe writers are sponsored by popcorn? Like planet-wide. Okay? Have you had popcorn in the past week? If not, maybe that's affecting your writing. See, Laura is getting her weekly allotment of popcorn in order to keep writing. Because, the brain, it runs on popcorn. Apparently for writers anyway. I don't know what to tell y'all. Roughage is your friend. That's what I'm going to tell y'all.
Yeah, no, you sit a lot as a writer. You need some extra fiber.
Right.
And popcorn's one of the best ways.
That's what we're going to claim anyway. So yeah, make sure that you have had your weekly allotment of popcorn. And we'll see you all back here in approximately 10 minutes. Mibbity beep. Mibbity beep. Mibbity beep. Puppies are awesome.
Yeah, puppies.
That sweet face.
Yeah.
All right. Hope everybody had a good little break.
Well, I won't explain it, but the highlight of the break was the phrase, "Man, even the potato chips are gay."
Is that a bad thing? Gay potato chips?
I win.
Yes, you do, babe. Are they too gay? Like, are they just too sparkly and glittered?
You're the one that said it. You gotta. I can't answer this question.
Explain.
The robot didn't quite hear correctly and thought that Charlie asked for nut potato chips. I'm like, man, even your potato chips gay.
So gay.
So gay.
Speaking of gay, I hear that in Japan, wet potato chips are all the rage, and I'm like, no, I'm not here for this.
What?
I can't cope, y'all.
That's like as bad as people washing the chocolate off of the Kit Kats.
Tom, I unmuted you. What'd you say?
Do I need to post the article on it and how to make your own at home?
Yeah, go post it in the Unicorn Council Discord server.
Laura, did you just say washing the chocolate off of the Kit Kats?
It
Who
was
is living this life?
It was a trend on the internet.
I try to think of myself.
I'm so glad my depression has kept me away from the internet because I would have gotten into so many flame wars over that.
I'd slap
Like-
a person. I mean, I like to think of myself
Miserable people.
aggressive. Like, hey, you ordered it, you paid for it, you enjoy it the way you want to enjoy it. I mean, well done filet, not my cup of tea, but hey, you want it cooked to death? We'll keep it juicy, but it's going to take forever, but it'll be done. They paid for it to eat it. I'm not going to judge. I'll quietly judge, but I'm not going to really judge.
I mean,
Washing the chocolate of your Kit Kat?
Are you happy? You done broke Brian.
because, like, you know, the filling in the Kit Kat is broken up Kit Kats with chocolate.
Yeah,
That's
it's like a diet Kit Kat.
I
You know,
see
the
that Roy
chocolate-
agrees
It's
with
sad to
Charlie
say, but
and me.
chocolate is probably the healthiest thing in a Kit Kat.
Uh-huh.
By far.
Yeah, it's like diet soda. It's called
Full of
soda.
antioxidants.
Hey, no HFCs.
Also, did you know that sugar in small amounts was used as medicine for stomach aches?
Yeah.
Which is why, if you have been gifted a box of my special tummy tamer tea, it is served best with a teaspoon of sugar, because the sugar actually helps your small intestine absorb the oils in the mint and the chamomile and so on. It actually helps your gut absorb the important flavonoids that will help settle your stomach.
I'm just going to say,
Spence's comments here. Yeah. What?
Shit.
How do you wait? What?
Get 'em.
What? What is that? That is not no.
okay,
I
look,
just
I'm
have,
just going to
like,
put this.
diced tomatoes left.
It's like you just what? Wait, what? No,
This is when I lean in and I give my.
no. At a certain point, I'm going to have to reject certain realities. Those are not real.
This is when I lean in and I go, why, certainly, nothing has any fat in it while you're in the building. It'll jump you when you get to the car, but no fat while you're in the building. Enjoy.
Here's just what I have to. Okay, this. You know what? Okay, here it is. If you are washing your hot sauce, that's called tomato sauce. Just open a can, baby.
Yeah.
Can I just want to say, if one more person tries to lecture me about the diet that Homo sapiens evolved to eat that has no concept of anthropology, I am
Yeah.
like, we've been cooking our food before we were Homo sapiens, right? That's why we have these nice tiny jaws. We didn't need to be able to crack those nuts with our teeth anymore.
Right.
That's why our jaws got so tiny.
It's also why our liver cannot cope with eating that much raw food.
Yeah.
And does not produce all the necessary enzymes required to be able to fully digest and pull the nutrients from all raw food all the time.
That's why we're never going to get rid of alcohol. We evolved with beer. Beer
And
has been
also
us
with
forever.
fruit fermenting in our gut
Yeah.
to help us pull those flavonoids out of the other things we're eating at the same time, so we can actually get the full nutritive value out of many foods. Like,
Also,
part of
fall, early winter food was mostly alcoholic.
oh God, yeah. Have you ever seen a drunk squirrel? It is freaking fantastic.
I have a friend who
No,
is an
drunk blue
anthropologist.
jay. just tips over.
I like these things are Amarula.
No, drunk magpies are.
Oh, that Amarillo! Oh my goodness, that Amarillo liqueur!
Yeah, that's
Like-
why I love doing tastings of it because it like taps into something like really. Like,
If you want to go
deep into a
back to when
person.
your ancestors were like not even were barely hominin, find yourself some Marullo fruit liqueur and take just a sip of it. You will suddenly have that ratatouille moment, but to a time that one of your like way distant ancestors before they left Africa,
the
like
greatest of great grandparents.
yes, the greatest of great grandparents. It is the weirdest like sense memory of like, oh my god, I've missed this so much, and what the hell is this flavor? I have never had anything like this before.
Yeah, amazing.
It,
He does it to everybody.
we've actually used that against one person to prove evolution.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. We showed a video of drunk monkeys eating the fruit that fermented on the ground, and then we here taste this and let them just go through that sense memory and just went, yeah.
Because I can't even describe it. It's like caramel banana kind of ish.
It's
I think that might be the
unique
closest.
flavor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was just trying to relate it to something.
Yeah, because caramel banana doesn't even quite.
Yeah,
it's
that's not
missing
quite.
The slight apple note. And
Yeah.
Rose note that's in it too.
Yeah. It's so good.
It's so strange, and yeah.
It will just devastate you psychically, though.
Yes, Eva is like, why is everyone talking about it? Everyone seems angry. And Tom did reply, because the paleo diet is disordered eating and not based in any reality. Yes, agreed. Also, just other weird dieting things people are doing, like washing the chocolate off of Kit Kat bars, calling it healthier.
What was it you told me the other day?
Just to eat a wafer cookie and call it a day. Like, it's just another way to say you want a wafer cookie, but you apparently don't know they exist.
You had somebody tell you the other day that they wanted their steak cooked well done because then it has less calories.
Oh, I don't know.
Like it was some weight loss diet that they were on, that they were allowed to have beer.
I swear, sometimes I think people make these diets up just to see who will follow along so they can laugh at these
I
people.
smile, nod.
If you want something crazy, research jelly juice.
Oh, that's. If you want to know the true story, Mills Powers has a breakdown of the horror that is jelly juice.
Like vegan wine that causes cancer.
Hard pass.
Yeah, like the vegan wine that causes cancer. Yeah.
You're drinking salt water.
Yeah, never drink a vegan wine. Don't let people trick you into vegan wine. It is so
Although-
bad for you.
Nothing for me in the realm of, diets and do they hear themselves, personally, will ever beat, I want to say it was Gwyneth Paltrow talking about her morning routine of getting alkaline water and then putting in a squirt of lemon juice.
Yes.
I love that so much.
Yeah.
I feel like that.
was. Mwah.
I feel like that is everything about the modern woo movement in one just in just one sentence. Like, I get my alkaline water and then I squeeze in some lemon juice. Like, yeah, now it's just water.
Let me get some alkaline and make it acidic. It's a science experiment every morning.
Yeah, it's slightly salty water. Yay.
Roy is dying to go outside, so I'm gonna go. So
Okay.
he stops crying on me.
He's like, ma'am, we are burning daylight right now. Do you know how little we get?
Seriously. See you later.
Okay.
That they want balanced water for vitamin C.
So
I'm just
now
saying.
that we've all had a wonderful food rant, or 3.
Although this is one of my favorite other ones. Like, gluten-free, right?
Oh, yes.
Of just pure sugar candies, fat-free, gluten-free jellies. Of like, I hope there's no gluten in this.
Don't even get me started on like the gluten-free thing, because yes, I know that celiacs are real. I know that there is actually a disease. I also know that 90% of the people that claim to have it really don't, because they're sitting over there with their wheat beer being totally fine while telling you they can't have bread.
Yeah. Versus those with celiacs or other gluten sensitivities really cannot handle beer.
Yeah.
Oh God, yeah.
Like, And there are many people with celiacs who don't even know they have celiacs. That's just, they think they just have IBS. Or they think they're just lactose intolerant and sensitive to a lot of meats and other things versus, no, dear, you definitely need to get tested in your doctor's crap.
Or the ones who talk about like it's a great weight loss diet. And it's like, well, yeah, no kidding. You cut out most of the high carb foods in your diet, and you're now having to eat more vegetables like you've been needing to.
Yeah, because let's be
Your
honest,
general calorie count has reduced.
It's a recurring
Your nutrition has
diet as
increased.
well.
as well as like what I have personally found in my own journey because of, you know, getting diagnosed with type 1 diabetes in my middle age, is vegetable fiber is a wonderful way to help control blood sugar. Because like it is amazing even for me how much vegetable fiber really will, more than anything else, really help keep my blood sugar steady. And it's something that I actually use to manipulate my blood sugar, both when I want it to be steady versus when I need it to drop, it's too high. And so avoiding vegetable fiber in order to get that drop so I can get it back down to something it needs to be.
After watching the trailer for The End of Men, I just feel like we're about ready for a resurgence of the Adamite movement that said that people gained weight because they wore too many clothes and it robbed their skin of the sunlight that they needed to melt the fat off. That sunlight literally melts your fat, so you have to basically run around naked if you want to lose weight. Like, if you're not naked, you'll never lose weight. And I feel like we're almost there.
And now in my head, all I'm hearing is, okay, I know the origin of this conspiracy theory. And I blame the usual culprit, journalists, who heard 5 words and ran with it.
See, my favorite thing about the Adamites is they were very popular during the Victorian era, which was the era of way too many clothing. And I just love that there was like this weird subculture that's like, we're going to get fit and trim by sitting around and ogling each other naked. That's our fitness regime. I'm like, oh honey, that's
whatever reason you need to come up with to just go, can't everyone just be a nudist? I mean, that's the fresh air movement. That's all of them. It's just we're tired of these clothes. And, as someone who suffers from clothes as well, I understand the need to get society to be okay with, me walking around in just socks and, short shorts.
Just embrace your inner buttons and get yourself a seagull.
I'm just reading a person.
Just can't it just be normalized to walk around like I can't remember the name of that character from Reno 911 who they kept picking up for solicitation. I can't remember the actor's name. But it's like he was always in wasn't it roller skates?
Yes.
And short shorts.
Yeah, he was in Blades of Glory as the stalker.
Yeah. I'm like, can we just normalize, walking around like that?
And the moral of the story, kids, is everything old is new again.
Yep.
Everything.
Everything is derivative. Don't ever worry about, are you original enough? That's not a thing. Don't sweat it.
On that note, there's a wonderful book called Forgotten English that I highly recommend that people get, especially if you're one of those people that worries about your own originality, because it's just words that have fallen out of use in English. And as you're reading through this book and going, wait, that was a thing back then? It was just called this other thing? Wait, what? Like, no, everything. We've always been a mess. We'll always be a mess.
If you want to just have a weekly laugh, I highly recommend going on Instagram and go search, correctly spelled, Horrors of Yore. Yore. And you will find out the history of so many terms and what we called various acts throughout history. And that, no, we've been doing this for centuries. We recorded it and we talked about it. We've had words for all of these things longer than you can imagine.
It's true.
You didn't invent anything in high school.
It is
If
true.
anything, Grandma could probably teach you a few things.
Yes, I agree. We just document our mess more these days. I agree.
Yep.
With you. All right. So
So,
we're in the final hour of editing for pacing and flow. What you got, Tom?
well, let's look at each of these paragraphs
Oh,
and
we're both
discuss a
clicking.
little
Sorry.
bit
I was trying to be helpful.
of,
Okay.
So, I mean, to be honest, this part's not bad. It's very much a slow build-up.
I feel, but I got to be honest, it goes against everything I was taught in journalism about how to actually grab the reader.
That's true. That is its big problem. You are kind of relying on your title to grab your reader.
This is like normally for your first paragraph, you need to grab them. So the whole I was on a patrol with the Cleveland police, that should be a second or third paragraph down. And you need to have, like more like the we're pukas, you idiot.
Yeah, it's like this is really the first, really what needs to be the first line.
Yes. Tom, are you editing your own copy or are you editing the copy everybody's supposed to copy and make their own copy of to edit?
Well, since I'm under your account, probably. Why don't I make a copy?
As the instructions said?
Instructions? What are these instructions?
You mean the instructions that nobody over the age of 8 reads?
Maybe.
Yep. The moment puberty hits, y'all, nobody reads instructions the rest of their life. Till they go into menopause or whatever they call it for, other non-uterus folks. I don't know. I don't know the terms for hormonal secession.
Which is one of the reasons why I've never understood why grimoires sell so well. I know so many people that are self-proclaimed witches, and they have never read any of those books. I know this because I did.
You're like, I read them. I was misled that I needed to read them.
I did the homework. I know what's in those books, and what you're saying is none of that.
All right, here we go.
Here we go. This time with emphasis.
So now we've actually got something to grab people's attention as they start the story. And note, these sentences are much shorter. We've got a 4-word sentence, another 4-word phrase, 2-word sentence, 3-word. So we are already showing tension. We're showing...
Also, I do want to point out that the whole "we're pukas, you idiot," one of them was yelling, not bunnies. Pukas got that. It is to go between the dialogue and the, what descriptive text is jarring. It is, as far as a flow perspective, it is better if we could have all the dialogue at once from one person. And then say at the end, they were yelling, if you feel that it's needed, because if you've got exclamation points, do you really need to say they were yelling? Again, we're looking at flow. Which is not to say that, this is an always rule. This is not an always rule. I'm talking about guidelines. Please remember, I am talking about guidelines. This is not an always thing.
In writing, there are almost no always rules.
I mean, presumably you need words in order to have a written story, but and I don't know. One day you may not even need words.
I know of at least one form of Japanese and one form of Chinese poetry where it's like jazz, man. You're supposed to listen to what's not there. It's
it's just guidelines, y'all. So just keep that in mind, that what I'm saying is more as guidelines. I'm not trying to say this isn't always. This is not. There's hardly any. But as a guideline, you don't want to break up the dialogue text, especially when it's from one person. If you're looking at flow.
And see, we can really just start it out with just this. We don't even need it to be an interview. We could just have him yelling into the dark right now
Right. Like, presumably we would then be expecting the reporter is coming in on this and they're just like reporting that this is the dialogue they witnessed.
Yeah. And then we come into, Cleveland. And we would probably want to, tighten this up.
So one of my notes to Mom that, back in the 2000s, she was trying to adjust, hence why you see there's a difference in what I read that was printed in 1993 versus her last editing that looks like it was around 2006, 2007, possibly 2008, actually, was where she says, I was on patrol with the Cleveland police when they got a tip about a deal at the waterfront warehouse. And the reason why she put that in is because I was like, why would law enforcement tell a reporter what's going on in an active investigation? This makes literally no sense. This is not how law enforcement works. So unless like you've got some special deal with the Cleveland police, this is highly suspicious. You've been watching way too many of these police procedurals.
Versus the more realistic one is to just entirely remove all of this and say
that
one day I was listening in on the police.
Yeah, on the police scanner. And I showed up as a reporter. Like, that makes a lot more sense.
Something closer to the last Thursday, I was listening to the police scanner.
So, because here's why. And here's why it really does affect editing and flow. Every time the reader is reading and they suddenly stop reading to go, but why is it like this? This doesn't make sense. Why would the police be telling them this? Their question has now interrupted the flow and the pacing. So you want to be answering their questions right before or right as they're having the question in their mind, so as not to interrupt the pacing and flow of your story. And that is definitely where alpha readers and critique partners come in handy.
And a very good questionnaire.
Mm-hmm. Or interviews.
I've talked to a lot of people who, when they use alpha readers, especially for the first time, and all they get back is, I liked it, or it was fine. Like, if they're not somebody who has gone through this process themselves and kind of have an idea of what you're wanting from this, you're going to have to rip it from them. Because again, see the very beginning of this stream, they don't want to hurt your feelings. They don't want you to feel like they're insulting you. They don't want to make you feel bad about what you wrote or regret that you shared it with them. Mm-hmm. So they're going to clamp down on their critiques when they really shouldn't. Like, that's the whole point of the process.
Right.
Like all of the sirens today.
So, okay, from a journalism point of view, it is always hello and welcome to You Are a Journalist. It is the death of LY words. Again, this is a guideline, but if you are writing for a newspaper or even an investigative magazine, they are going to clamp down on any word that ends in LY. Silently, I watched in an unlit doorway, assessing what they... So again, in this context, silently is really not needed. If you are watching in an unlit doorway, assessing what they were doing, are you making a lot of noise? Who does that? Nobody. So there's no need to say silently. So anytime you have a word in LY, as my favorite editor used to say to me for the newspaper, he said, ask yourself, is this word that ends in LY absolutely necessary? Is there no other way you can say it or imply it to your reader than this one word that ends in LY? Like, this word that ends in LY must definitely defend its life.
It also could be covering up for a stronger verb that you could be using. Like, if you wanted to really stress how you are sneaking around and doing this, you could say, instead of I watched, I eavesdropped.
Right. There's better words. That. There's better ways to phrase it. And yes, I look, as y'all may have noticed in my real life, I love words that end in ly. But when writing a story, I want stories to be powerful.
Every time I find an ly word that I can't justify getting rid of, I just sit for a minute and relish the sounds of Ernest Hemingway screaming, and just have a moment of joy for myself, and then I move on.
mean, he kind of has it coming though.
And there, so like there's, and I removed another ly.
Especially?
Yeah. Of like, no, instead, how about I thought after I saw? I mean, saw is definitely a much stronger word.
After I witnessed, yeah, saw is like I witnessed this.
Yeah.
Because I was physically there.
The only time it doesn't make sense to really interrogate your adverbs is in dialogue, because they could be used as a distancing technique that the speaker is using to obscure what they're saying. It could show that they're having a lack of certainty about what they're saying. There are a lot of reasons to have them in dialogue.
Or that they're trying to bias you.
Yes.
That they're trying to say to the other person, whoever this character is talking to, or this real person is talking to, they're trying to influence their feelings or perspective to create a bias. And that is something that people do. So you would want to record that if somebody was actually using those words. But in your own descriptive text, every ly word has to fight for its reason to live.
Yep.
Love Maggie. I love all the ly words.
I just had that up there.
Oh, sorry.
Hello, BA.
But versus, like, I kind of want to put here, luckily, which, yeah, it is a bias. We are trying to get you to empathize with the writer.
Mm-hmm. Like, or you could have disappointingly, there was none. Like, again, like, that's the truth of a real reporter. It's like, I was disappointed there was no firing. Like,
it's one of the main things that we as writers don't like to admit openly that often, is that the purpose of our prose is to emotionally manipulate people. Like, that is what is going on here. That's actually why readers like to read. They want you to make them feel something.
Mm-hmm.
So
and that's why I'm like, remove the his. Don't give me a gender.
I'm talking about removing ly words here because this is supposed to be a reporter who is supposedly, especially in the 90s and in the 2000s, writing from a less biased perspective, because that was the goals back in the 90s, supposedly. Notice my ly word. Anyway, so that is why I'm using that to point out about it, of like when you're trying to make it appear like something a reporter would write. That is a different, how would we say, writing convention, maybe? Or editing convention than we would necessarily use in our straight fiction, like Maggie's Sword and Planet stuff.
And it's also really important when you're doing voice like that, very specific voice, if you're not sure, the internet is a many splendid thing. You can find examples of exactly what you're wanting it to sound like that do exist, so you can get a feel for it yourself. I like to write a lot of fictitious documents, especially in both my urban fantasy setting and in my, let's just be honest, in all of them. And when I'm talking about something that, like, here's a letter that these people wrote to their Highnesses William and Mary, well, I should go look at what did royal correspondence look like at that time and get a feel for the vernacular, get a feel for everything else. And it will also affect your pacing. And you got to decide for yourself, how much of the stilted language do you want to put in?
Also, we'll see here in this paragraph that as the paragraph goes on, the sentences get longer. And so the reader will start to relax. This is just a type of phrasing most people in English, at least, will do naturally. Is, as the tension ramps down, your sentences should naturally get longer.
Again, because we've had several people show up later, I just wanted to post the link again to the document that we are using as a practice exercise. What you do is you go to the document in this Google Docs. There are instructions, but essentially you're making a copy of it. And so you have your own copy to edit rather than editing the original document you just clicked on. So that this is an article our mother wrote and published in 1993. Originally, our mother and our stepfather gave me the intellectual property rights to everything our mother wrote. And this is an article she wrote that Tom and I had tried to help Mom edit originally before it was published. And then essentially I have continued to help her edit till she passed away. But she would have welcomed this. So we thought this would be a great way for people to practice editing for pacing and flow while having the emotional detachment of not having to edit their own stuff, as well as the original author of this has been dead for 10 years. So no one will be haunting you. So you are totally safe to truly tear it apart, edit it however you want, but please make sure that you make a copy of the document and you edit the copy of the document. If you mess up, it is okay. I still have a copy of the original document and I can then make it for everybody if they need it. I can paste it in. So don't worry. If you mess it up, please just let me know that it needs to get fixed, that you accidentally edited it. It's okay. I promise nothing will happen. And I will go in and fix it. But I just wanted everybody to know, please click on this, save this now, and you can edit it later to practice your editing and flow. As well as, honestly, if you wanted to write in this world, my mother would have welcomed it. So please have a good time. Anyway, back to our regular schedule. Please continue, Tom.
And even though we've made changes, so she now was not doing a ride-along. She, overheard this and showed up after hearing it on the police radio. It doesn't actually change much about this, the journalistic interactions.
Mm-hmm.
Of people now are just, used to journalists show up, they have credentials. We actually have, someone gave the all clear.
Bless you. There's something definitely blooming because, I'm having so much drainage. Good Lord.
I think something blew in with the front.
Oh my God. Every time I blow my nose, there's plenty there.
Mm-hmm.
And then, we have, how she, meets the two rabbits, the two pukas.
Right. Harvey and Harry.
And then, we start with who or what are you guys and what are you dressed up for? Now, since we used the early interview lines, we probably need to reiterate or somehow have a callback.
Callback to what?
This top set.
Mm-hmm.
The attention grabber. Because this is where the initial, information that she was asking comes in.
Mm-hmm.
And so we kind of need to reference that, we did a flashback essentially with the last Thursday.
Just say I never really quite understood her whole descriptive text about the VW bugs. I didn't even, it never went anywhere. Why is a whole paragraph describing these vehicles and who are these, and they're never really mentioned again?
Yeah, she doesn't do a good job of describing that, these are the vehicles these two pukas are driving.
Again, one of the reasons why I thought that this was going to end up being about hard drugs, not only the DEA agents, but you're referencing a vehicle that has a strong association with hippie culture.
Yeah.
And again, with drug culture. It's the second mention of something that it's another mention of something that put me in a very different mindset to the story that I ended up getting.
And so in truth, we really can just delete it. Depending on, because it is conflicting with the story that's actually being told. Because we have to ask ourselves, is this,
is this side quest or subplot?
And is it changing expectations that are never getting fulfilled?
Because unless you're doing actual serialized fiction, and you know that you're going to answer that question later.
Yeah, like you will actually kind of lose your audience.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I feel like this is where we really see, like, you can over describe. It doesn't really go anywhere. I really don't. If anything, it kind of confuses the character illustration or profile the writer is trying to make. And within this article, there is no callback to it. So we don't understand why was it described in the first place. So it's sort of a Chekhov's gun situation. Don't describe the gun on the mantle unless somebody is going to use it before the end of the article.
Versus probably more good usage for this is simply after about 10 minutes, 2 cars drove into the warehouse.
So when I was doing the edits on Raid, there were 2 segments in there that Meadow felt could be taken out because they slowed the story down a little bit and she didn't see how it was relevant to the story itself. And I explained to her that those are things that are being set up now so they don't spontaneously appear in book 2, so that we can do a callback to them later. And the other one is something that will be relevant even further down the series, but again, did not want it to just magically come out of nowhere, because that's a big problem for me in fantasy. Mm-hmm. And so once she understood, like, oh, so that's the functional purpose of these, it became a lot of work on pacing those descriptions so that they were memorable enough for people to have them kind of lodged in the back of their brain, so when they come back up and are important later, they go, oh, wait, wasn't that in the first book? Because that's a great thrill as a reader when you get a payoff of something like that, but that didn't slow down the actual story. And we spent a lot of time on stuff like that. So when I see like the VW bugs, I'm waiting for the payoff.
Right.
I'm just waiting for it. Like
as well as then references to DEA, which is drug enforcement.
Yep.
Right.
Versus like probably better choices would be USDA or Department of Agriculture.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not just Department of Agriculture, but the Department of Fish and Wildlife.
Oh, Fish and Wildlife. Because there's a big bunny roaming the warehouse?
No, because we're in the warehouse district in Cleveland. So warehouse district is next to shipping. It's shipping, it's water-based.
Import, export. Okay.
Yeah. So
honestly, yeah, I would expect customs to possibly be more involved than DEA, which again, like it's that Chekhov's gun of why are you involving which of these departments versus other options? There are plenty of government agencies. Also, the one I mentioned with her was, what about the alcohol and tobacco and firearms? Often they're the ones called in rather than the DEA, at least for first, because the DEA at the time, if I remember correctly, in the early 90s, was actually at the time under the scope of the alcohol, tobacco, and firearms.
I was gonna say, I thought the DEA didn't have any, what do you call them? Boots on the ground, with guns type. Mm-hmm. Like that was usually the ATF's job.
Yeah, I thought so too.
DEA was more like IRS.
But she thought that people wouldn't necessarily know. And I'm like, excuse me, it's Mississippi. Everybody knows about the ATF because of moonshining. All the alphabet agencies, you're right.
And the other thing
would be Homeland Security.
And the other thing to bear in mind here is, as Glory keeps talking about Chekhov's gun, you also have to remember we have a whole several generations now that have grown up after Alfred Hitchcock, who really pushed this idea that if something is important, show it to the audience 3 times. Mm-hmm. Anything that you want your audience to remember, you have to show it to them 3 times. And that cements it into their mind, oh, this is important. So this repetition of these drug references, we've got 2, I can't remember if there's a third right now, but because I'm of the many generations that came after Alfred Hitchcock declared this grand rule for writing. It's ingrained in me. If I see something 2 to 3 times, you're telling me this is important.
Yes.
You need to be paying attention to this, because that's the language of storytelling that we have inherited from him and all of the, filmmakers and storytellers that have come afterwards.
Yeah, there is 3 references at least to the DEA, because like at the end of the article, I see the DEA wants to question you about those black jelly beans.
Yeah.
She keeps mentioning the DEA, and then nothing ever comes of it, and it doesn't have a proper conclusion about the dang jelly beans. They're little rabbit turds, y'all. That was the real punchline that she then edited out.
Or in this version, it's spinach, which again, USDA would make more sense.
So, like, essentially, it was a subplot that she then removed the punchline to and left the rest of it. And that's where it gets confusing. And we wanted y'all to see that of like, here, look, Mom was great at premise. I'm not going to lie. She was real good at premise. But this had gotten edited so many times, she didn't quite remember where she was going with some of these quests and subplots.
We're taking back to what we're always talking about. Save
we're
your
also
drafts.
wondering if it's USDA, we can then you're then putting the idea into people's heads of, you already just said white rabbits. Of, are these like some mutant white rabbits?
Right? Have they escaped from a laboratory? Because we've all seen those big rabbit pictures. Those Welsh rabbits and the Belgian rabbits that are all actually from South America. We've all seen those of like, did they mutate those South American bunnies? They say they're pukas, but is that a lie too? I have questions.
And if you want to see this principle like laid out very well in movie form, I highly recommend the movie Knives Out, because everything that is important to the actual end of that movie, like if you watch it very carefully, everything that is important to the actual end, like how the story actually resolved, is mentioned 3 distinct times. All of the red herrings are mentioned once.
Mm-hmm.
Every single red herring is mentioned once. It is then like lightly anytime it's brought up again, it's never specifically said. And it's such a subtle thing that it's enough to keep it in your mind, but it's not enough to drive you crazy going, well, why wasn't that the answer? It's a very well set up mystery story, and I can't wait for the sequel. But it's so on display in that, because there's a lot of things that are important to understanding the end of that movie. And it does a very good job with it.
Mm-hmm. I agree. So originally, or not originally, but like in Mom's latest edit, she had put the whole thing in this really weird font that's supposed to look like handwriting. And I think that's where that quarter 1/4 mark is a little bit lower. That's just in the middle. It has to do with when I converted it over. I had to use several softwares to convert it out. I don't even want to talk about how I'm mad at Word. But anyway, because Word 2007 is apparently an entirely different beast than Word in the 2010s. And it was like, no, I can't use this. And I had to like do some shady stuff to get it. But I didn't notice that quarter mark. So anyway, y'all, just you fix it as you need to.
But I'd also like to point out, if this is an exercise that you enjoy, when I first started really getting into writing, the editor of like the God editor that I'm always talking about, John, told me that if I want to get better at this, take a classic that I love, go to Project Gutenberg, go to anywhere where you can get a free downloadable, editable copy of a thing that you love, and edit it for vocabulary, for pacing, for time, because a lot of older stories linger a lot more than modern stories do. And so by sitting there, I remember when I was trying to get some of my pacing down, going back and basically doing revisions of Lovecraft stories. Because, oh, did he love his large words and complex sentence structures. And his pacing was not always the best.
Yeah, honestly, like Dickens is wonderful for that.
Mm-hmm.
Dickens is so wordy. There's plenty to edit. We chose this rather than using an old one just simply because we knew that it wasn't fully edited and that it was in more modern speak. So we thought people might have an easier time with it. And because we felt like this is something even beginning writers / editors can really sink their teeth into, versus some of the older classics are, some of them, not all, but some of them are pretty well edited. And so it's a little bit harder to find where to improve it. Versus this one, we feel that it is ripe for improvement, so that, you know, even middle schoolers, which I have actually given a copy of this when I was teaching writing to sixth graders, and they had many editorial notes for my mother. I made a photocopy for each of them, and they like took their red pen to it and they loved it. So I felt like everybody could have a good time with this one. Of like, I promise anybody will, even people who aren't really into writing yet, will see things that they would like to change or move around. And so, you know, to foster that, because I would also, while I would like to grow editors, I would also like to nurture, while I would like to nurture writers, I would also like to nurture editors here.
And yeah, Maggie, but also, if you really want to get this down, grab anything by Victor Hugo.
Oh, God, yes.
Oh, God.
Anything.
But first you have to read it to then edit it, and that is a lot of sacrifice.
But if you want to understand Kill Your Darlings, this is a man who never killed a darling in his life.
Yes, but he was truly paid by the word.
He was, and you could tell. It is so obvious. But I mean, you could just pick one book and spend the rest of your life using it for exercises because they're all so long.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't need to be.
They really don't.
The same thing can be said of Tolstoy.
Yes.
Oh, God.
I feel so bad for his wife, who had to retype.
Mm-hmm.
What was it, 5 times?
Yep.
Yeah.
By hand at the kitchen table while she raised how many children? Good Lord, that woman deserved a medal.
And on the other side of that, you have Dostoevsky. Like, if you want to like just see what clean writing looks like, there is not a. It's you need to find a good translation because he wrote in Russian, but it's really hard to bloat his text because he is so concise and so clear on what is going on at every point in the story that
and unlike so many, there's a reason Dostoevsky was lauded in his time.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like, The Brothers Karamazov is a great read just for that, because they're short stories, basically.
Especially for Russian.
But he may be the most concise writer I have ever read in my life. And if you really want to understand being overly bloated, anything James Fenimore Cooper ever wrote.
Oh, good Lord. I like things more concise. I get that not everybody agrees with me, that some people like it less concise or they like it a bit wordier. I get that. I really do. It's just, I don't have the attention span.
I'm just going to say there's a place and time for everything. Like, I love me some Tolkien. I love me some Robert Jordan. But if I'm not in the mood for the loquaciousness of either of these two men, there are other places.
And here, also like to point out something else that my mother wrote, or a grammar style and rule my mother used that has truly fallen out of favor so much that even to my eyes, it hurts my head. And it's how she has her character ask questions. She even says that the character is asking, and nowhere is there a question mark.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That was driving me nuts too.
It is done as a statement.
Yeah.
It's like, is this an interrogative? What are you doing?
And it's just grammar rules have changed since well, technically it was the 90s when it was published, but let's be honest, Mom was born in 1946.
Yeah.
So it's really, she's going by 1950s and early 60s grammar rules, which, yeah, things have changed in the last several decades. Now you put in the question marks if somebody is asking versus if they are stating.
And in truth, at this point, you really can do either point. You can either, if you don't want to use commas, you can change that to a question mark and leave it as a period here, as, it's a statement. You're telling them that, they asked. Or you can just leave that comma and put a question mark at the end.
But again, like, part of this is it does affect pacing and flow because it affects the reader's eye.
And perception.
If the reader stops to go, wait, what? Then that has affected the pacing or the flow or both. And so that is why so here's what's going to happen for every writer. At a certain point, you are going to be 10 to 20 years older than your average reader. It happens to everybody. And you need to be aware of how grammar is a living thing. It is ever evolving, and you need to stick with how it is currently versus what you grew up with, even though in your own way you are right. But that's not what's right for your readers anymore. And you need to just go with the flow of what they feel is right because you don't want to interrupt their eye.
And also, here's a good point and a good place to decide, do you want to, again, continue emotionally manipulating and cluing your reader in on additional details about your characters? Because instead of just simply going, I asked, you can show either that, you can either do I asked quizzically for truly what movie are you talking about? Or because, this is a journalist, hopefully this journalist is, actually watches movies.
Or stays aware of current culture.
Yeah. You can do I asked feigning ignorance of, let the reader know what's going on inside, especially the first person character's mind. Like, that's part of the whole point of using first person. And so at least you can empathize with one character.
And pacing can really help you get across a lot about character. One of the things that I really enjoyed about the Dresden books is the way those stories are narrated. Oh, I know who Harry Dresden is. I've had drinks with people like him at the bar. Like, I know that, like, just the way the story is paced, where the punchlines are, how elaborate the setups get for those punchlines. Like, I know this person. I know this art of storytelling that he's coming from. And it makes him so much more of a real character in my brain, which is really important because those stories are so outlandish that the fact that they are paced in a way that just makes you feel like you're sitting at a bar with a guy who you're not sure if he's had too much to drink or if he's had a really eventful night. But, oh, honey, does he have a story for you? And that so much of that is conveyed in how those stories are paced out. When he tells you how he tells you what he found important, and then later tells you, but, oh, I was so wrong about that. And you're like, so why did you make me sit down and go through all of this? Because that's the kind of person Harry Dresden is. Don't you know that kind of person? Like, I've had to suffer through this. You do too. And so, you know what I'm saying? Like, it is so much a part of his character that it brings those stories more to life.
Good point. Changing slightly. But speaking of, I think it was last week, I think it was on this show, We were talking about when publishers and writers republish previously published books and stories. And you see, what's it called? Edition 3 or 4th edition or whatever. Part of what should be happening that changes the edition is we're going to update it for current audiences. So like the word "yeah" has changed. It's now spelled with YEAH instead of YAH. We want to use that exclamation point to indicate that this is an excited tone. And also we want to change "wow" from all caps to regularly formatted, because all caps is considered yelling. It no longer just indicates, like bold text that, someone had a heightened emotion. It actually indicates yelling. So this is what you should be changing between editions, is make it current for the audience of that year and that decade to, again, understand and read correctly what they wrote.
Yeah, I would honestly recommend, because it'll happen to all writers eventually. You'll get to a certain age and you're putting out, you're reissuing something that you maybe published in the first 10 years of your career. I highly recommend hiring an editor that is notably younger than you, obviously still qualified, but so that they can help you with what are the current norms of grammar and style,
I'm going through that right now.
You don't know, like you're a little older, maybe you don't have that many friends who are in their 20s, but you're going to want to be edited for what are the current norms. So at least they'll hold for the next 10 to hopefully even 20 years, if possible. That is something to keep in mind in your future as a writer, whether you're a hobbyist or you're a professional full-time writer.
Yeah, that's what I'm going through right now with my Legend of the Jade Moon books, because I have been working on book 5 in that series, and I just put books 1 through 4 up over on World Anvil. If you go to arsalamauer.com, you can find them. But when I read them, they're so not my writing style anymore that I want to just pull out the outline and rewrite the whole thing. I'm not letting myself do that because I actually want to write book 5, and I don't want to wait a couple years while I go through the rewriting process. But I'm going back through, and I am touching up the language. I am going through and freshening it up a little bit, because what books looked like 15 years ago when that book came out, actually got longer, 17 years ago. Oh, I'm old. Anyway, when that book came out...
Oh, honey.
It's almost 20 years old. That book is almost 20 years old.
Oh, I feel called out. Go on.
Next year, that book will be able to vote. Next year, that book will be old enough to vote.
Hush.
And order cocktails on its own.
Harry says, write book 5 and then do a second edition.
Actually, it would be a third, because there was a second, because the original editor for that book was a monster who made me cut out all the gay characters.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So
monster.
When I got the rights back from them, I did a second edition where I put them back in. So, but yeah, I am doing a light refresh on it just to fix some of the things that are in there, because it reads very much a 15-year-old book.
I feel that way, actually. I was going over my my articles I'd written for the sex column for the newspaper in college, and because I was like, oh, I can just republish these in a kind of a book format for KDP. And I was like, oh, these need to be edited. Both grammar has changed, as well as I now know more about grammar, but mostly just grammar norms have changed so much in 15 years that these really stand out, and I now see where like, oh, it's kind of giving wrong vibe on some of these.
I did things with N dashes and M dashes that were perfectly okay 15
Yes.
years ago that would make people explode today.
Yes, baby, preach it.
So yeah, the way I'm controlling this is I'm treating it as a final draft. Like I've done all I'm not letting myself change the story. I'm not no new scenes are getting added. Nothing. It's just this is my final pass through to make sure everything is good to go and giving it that one more once over. But it's painful because I see scenes that I'm like, I could write this so much better now.
Another thing I'm noticing, rereading this, of things that have changed in the last 30 years. Is
stop aging us like this.
Is that when this was written, there was still very much a hardcore view of the concept of journalistic integrity, which was that journalists were absolutely, neutral on the subjects they reported on, and did not have any kind of judgments or thoughts. They were not trying to persuade. That was for the editorial and opinions page. But now, if you do not include some forms of emotionality in your writing, people will think the journalist is rather standoffish. If they're not too much of a jerk, but they're still kind of, older, they will go, is this person autistic? Why am I not? What's going on here? Your reader again will have this confusion.
Yeah, why are they emotionally detached?
So we now actually have to change it to make the journalist character more emotional. So instead of just commenting on the obvious descriptors that are without any emotion, like long or big, don't have that much, we need to add in a little bit. So instead of just large fluffy tail, put gorgeous. Put how does the fluffy tail stand out? Something, because modern readers expect more emotionally charged words.
The great J.I. myth.
Journalistic integrity.
Oh, yeah. It died. We miss it. Yeah. I mean, I'm not going to say Fox News killed it.
Oh, no, Reagan did. Reagan purposely killed it.
Literally, my journalism class taught us about Reagan.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what people say, even in print, about someone. It is just matters that the imagery is positive. That is where the actual bias comes in.
And then once Reagan was in, he literally changed laws to remove requirements for journalistic integrity. Like literally remove those laws. Yeah.
Maggie thinks Nixon killed it.
Nixon showed it was vulnerable.
Yes, Nixon showed its vulnerability.
Let's be honest. It was everybody that worked for Nixon that killed it because they went on to take over all of these institutions.
Yes. G. Gordon Liddy.
Yeah,
let's all groan together.
Because, I mean, he really had the rogues gallery of, they're the people that messed everything up. Because G. Gordon Liddy, Roger Stone was in there. Roger Ailes was in there. Why were they all named Roger?
The only one I ever heard apologize from that time period for their "How have I destroyed society" was the one who actually came up with and first used the term "I can neither confirm nor deny" that statement or that question.
Which I just love that you hear that now and you're like, oh, that's a confirmation. Thank you.
But yeah, I hope seeing like how we would edit this and the changes we make kind of give you some ideas of what we're talking about when we talk about pacing and flow. You want to make sure just the words go one to the next without things that distract your reader. That is flow.
I would get rid of really. Sorry, that word's just really bothering me. So
So they really existed?
So they really existed. Wait a minute, because it slows that down too much. Wait.
Yeah.
So they exist. So they existed.
Yeah, you're right. That is more powerful.
So they existed. I asked. Wait a minute. Back up. Like there needs to be more of an. More.
Also, just
more
how many times she just refuses to use the question mark? It's like that's an obvious question.
Why would wait a minute be a question? Isn't wait a minute a command?
It depends on the journalist's use, but yeah.
As I said, like, yeah, there's some things like Tom and I aren't always going to agree on, and there's not a right or wrong, okay? Again, I want to reiterate again, just in case for anybody who needs the confirmation. It's an art. Writing is an art. Editing is an art. There's no perfect. There's only what seems to work for right now. I promise.
I think that's one of my big bugaboos. I use the word really too much in my first drafts. Looking at it, I'm like, why are you slowing this down? Stop.
Oh, let's see. What are my crutch words? Like? Oh, yes. I was heavily influenced by Saved by the Bell. I admit it.
That
is definitely one that I have spent 20 years cutting out.
Oh, yeah.
Spend the rest of my lifetime cutting out is that. And sometimes I still leave it in because I can't quite bear to part with it.
Like right here?
Yeah, like honestly, a lot of the actual dialogue the reporter is saying is what I said when I was playing the reporter for Mom, as she played Harry and Tom played Harvey. So, be warned. And so you do see, like, this is how I talked when I was 14. Okay. That's 14.
Also, yes, used to love commas. The English language has changed so much.
Yeah, like now it's the commas are rationed to my children. You may only have one a paragraph tops.
Also, why is that but even in there like that?
I don't know.
I find actually to be one of the few useful crutch words that I have, because so many of my stories deal with illusions that it's almost helpful to have the character clarify this. No, this is actually in front of me. Like, I find better ways to say it, but it's...
Oh, I do love actually. Oh, God. It must be a generational thing of, well, actually. Yeah, I do it too. I hate it. Had. Oh, God. Do I love had? What the heck
all
it
the
was.
hads.
Yes, like and really. Just is another crutch word.
I once had Per Writing Age shut down because it highlighted so many hads that it just couldn't anymore.
Maggie, everybody who is 5 years older than me or older than that, like, excessively abuses commas by today's standards. And I have to, when I have somebody older than me edit, I have to then go remove all the commas that they put in, because just readers who are younger than me just cannot stand them. They interrupt their eye flow. And then I have to then deal with that editor being like, well, why did you remove all my commas? And it's like, because I'm writing for people younger than both of us. I'm so sorry.
And to tell you when did this happen, I know, as a quick side quest. The ACTs in 1999, I took they also included a sort of study guide with a lot of sample questions. And the English questions were 33 or 36 questions. Of those, 11 out of them were on comma usage. And of those 11, literally one was use a comma. Everything else was do not use a comma. They were telling everyone, stop using commas for everything.
Mm-hmm. So that happened
they
in
can
the
rip
mid-90s.
my Oxford comma from my cold, dead hand. sense.
Do you know how hard it's been to get Gloria to accept and understand, yes, the Oxford comma is good? She fought me on that one for over 20 years. And lately she's been like, okay, maybe you have a point.
There are very few grammar rules.
Because I don't want to eat grandma, okay? I may be pan, but no, not that.
There are very few rules that I will go to like war over. That is one of them. Like I will, because I had somebody try to explain to me how that's not how the kids write these days, and I'm just like, and they're wrong. Like, I'm sorry, no. Nothing that makes your story less intelligible is good.
I know, but this is how the readers are, and we need to accept them where they are.
Yeah.
As I said, other than when we come to let's not eat grandma, okay? Let's not eat grandma. Let's not shoot and leave.
But like one of the other things that's going to change in the next decade, like I don't think there's a question at this point. As much as I want to die on this hill, is that within a decade there will be no more differentiating between literally and figuratively.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Of just, you're gonna have to accept that for your readers, literally means figurative.
Which is why I've started to rely on actually a lot more.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think that's why that's become such a crutch word for me, because I can't think of another word for literally that doesn't have that ambiguity in it, because I don't. When you're writing stories where there's magic and illusion, sometimes you need to explain what is illusion and what is not in a way that is simple and concise and doesn't take 3.5 paragraphs. I love you, Tolkien, but stop.
Yeah. You are left now with the options of actually, truly, and really.
Now, according to Thor's.com, there is also completely, directly, plainly, precisely, simply as well. And then there's other alternatives, such as unmistakably, letter by letter, correctly, faithfully, indisputably, not figuratively.
Letter by letter, when you have to deal with the death of Ly.
Yeah.
But it's letter by letter.
Rigorously, unerringly, undisputably, undeviatingly, to the letter, veritably, verbatim. So, just saying, there are options. I promise you won't be left out in the cold. That's the beauty of the English language. Why the English language continues to be the more dominant language, aside from the fact that also English language produces great medium, material stories, it is so flexible. It's such a living thing. So it does change to meet the times.
Though it's very important also to understand, like, at least a little bit of what goes on in meme culture, so you don't accidentally say something that you don't intend to say.
What up, my fam?
I stand with you.
Oh, no.
I had a moment the other day where I had a character in shock say, I can't, I'm sorry. This is my problem. I cannot say this word anymore. Inconceivable. And that derailed my writing for the rest of the day.
I do not think that word means what you think it means.
Yeah. I was done for the day.
Memes.
I typed that word.
Some of the original shit.
Like, I just can't. And everything is getting so meta. Like, we were watching one of the more recent episodes of the Black Lady Sketch Show, and that send-up they did of the Elon Musk hospital, millennial Gen Z hospital. On Black Lady Sketch Show, I was laughing my butt off.
She's linked out of there.
I had to compliment, though, the writers, because obviously they knew some nurse, because everything was correctly used.
Yes.
And
like, I'm listening to all this, like, surely they're going to goof up. No, that's all actually correct. That's not just medicalese. They really used it right.
And Brian hadn't seen the original, because I would not punish him with that. So we had to actually stop. I had to show him the horrible Elon Musk skit so that he would understand why that was so funny, because this intertextuality has become such a thing in modern culture and in modern writing that you need to realize when you are doing that unintentionally
But I do want to point out
or
again, like,
intentionally.
as writers, we don't need to let this fear of ever evolving English grammar and
Oh, no.
conventions stop us from writing, let alone publishing. Here's the thing. Fellow writers will help you if you can't afford a professional editor.
Yep.
Heck, a bunch of readers will be happy to help, explain like current, language conventions to make it more readable for them. And like people will help you. So do not again let this, because I know as creatives we're so good at putting up barriers for ourselves. Let this not also be another barrier. Write it imperfect and don't sweat it, okay? It's just when we put on the editing hat that we then become very analytical about this. And that's okay. But you don't need to have the analytical hat on when you are in the creation phase.
Oh, no. Just beware when your character's saying conceivable, you're done for the day.
Maggie is killing me here. How dare you write it in verse, my sweet. I love you. Okay, so how about we then wrap up, because it has been 3.5 hours, Tom. Tom has his editing hat on and does not want to stop. I can see it.
I'm also just looking at like just truly how many things have changed. It's like you cannot shorten fringe benefits anymore to fringes.
No, you can't.
No.
You have
Oh,
to say
no.
fringe
Fun fact, when I was
oh.
a kid, I thought that was French benefits because I kept mishearing Southerners say it. And I thought they were saying French benefits instead of fringe benefit. It sounded very similar to me as a kid because I was
There's
hereditary processing disorder. So
There's also very little difference between a southern j sound and a southern ch sound.
yeah, it's very soft. It's so soft. So yeah, I was like French benefits, and then nobody corrected me when I said French because they thought it was that southern soft. Anyway, that's a whole other. That's a whole like right there with meet me by the car door or the corridor. It's right there. All right, so my sweet Charlie,
Yes.
do you have any final thoughts about editing for pacing and flow that you need to get off your chest before we conclude for the day?
Mainly kind of what we started with, have a robot read it to you, because I don't think it's safe for a lot of writers to read it for themselves, because you have the character's inflection in mind. So you will find yourself talking faster and talking slower because you have the narrator's inflection. The reader won't have that. That has to come through on the page. So having a robot go through and painfully word by word read your text
in a deadpan,
it really does help you figure out if your story is lagging, or when you're writing that action sequence, is it actually quick and to the point and exciting? Because if you find yourself nodding off while the robot's reading to you, what do you think a reader's going to do reading the text?
Good point.
Yeah. I have a final thought.
What you got, babe?
Should I say this politely, or the sassiness you hear when the camera's off?
I think that we are done with the politeness for today.
Okay.
We're among neurodivergent friends, just saying.
So when you're writing a story, you are writing for other people. If you are writing for yourself, that's fine. Accept it. But, it is, there's no other term, masturbatory. You're just trying to excite yourself.
Mm-hmm.
But if you are not writing for just yourself, if you want anyone else to read this, you have to put yourself in their mindset and accept them where they are. So, as I said, like, terms change. How people read things change. What the grammar rules are, what the common parlance is, change with time. So make sure you are writing it for the reader, not for yourself. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you want to write something that you enjoy, because you're going to read this a lot. But hopefully you're trying to find readers who enjoy the same thing you do. But just because they enjoy it doesn't mean they have the same grammar background and they are the exact same age and had the same teachers growing up telling them this is how you write stuff. You need to write it for modern times, for your modern audience.
The way I think of it is you write the first draft for yourself. You're telling yourself a story. You edit for your readers. You edit to essentially translate the story you were telling yourself in your first or even second draft. And you then edit to translate it for the rest of the world or your intended readers. That's how I think of it personally, as far as my personal process of absolutely write for yourself. Write the things that you wished had been written that you could read for you. But then edit for others to essentially clarify, to explain, to make it a fun experience for them too, so they can essentially be along on this journey with you in this adventure, this story, whatever you're trying to tell.
Remove as many roadblocks as you can to their enjoyment. Because you're just going to have to assume if they're reading it, they're the kind of person who would enjoy it. Now, make it easier for them to read. Make it easier for them to understand what's going on.
So I guess for me, my final thoughts are to just again reiterate, flow, it can be remedied a lot easily by just reading it out loud to yourself and listening to yourself, or having a deadpan robot read it out loud to you and editing accordingly. Pacing, on the other hand, is about the action or the exciting sequences versus the slower sequences. And honestly, with that, when I'm sort of finding that I'm struggling with pacing, I can feel when I'm reading it out loud or the computer's reading it to me that the pacing feels uneven. And by that, I mean, it's not feeling like this nice, fun roller coaster, but it feels, how do I say, sort of blocky. More like plateaus and then dips and valleys, like long valleys, and then suddenly we're back on a plateau, and it feels uncomfortable. What I have been known to do is literally have post-it notes with, say, even just when I'm writing an article, so it's just paragraphs, it's not like a big piece, is each paragraph is one line to sum up each paragraph, and I have them on tiny little post-it notes, the little ones, the 1 inch by 1 inch, and I just move them around to help me visualize. And each post-it note will have either an up arrow or a down arrow or a sideways arrow to denote that it's just sort of even keel. It's not really, it's just stating facts. Facts are not normally very emotional. And I will rearrange them in a couple different ways. Since they're post-it notes, you can keep picking them up and putting them back down. And that sometimes helps me. So I just want to point out, with pacing, no matter how down in the dumps you may feel like, I'm never going to get this right, I promise you there's a way. And if you're neurodivergent, you already have the brain you need to figure out an alternate way. And if you're not neurodivergent, may I recommend that you make a friend among all of us so we can maybe help you with an alternate way to figure out your pacing. Because that is what neurodivergent people bring to the table.
And I just thought of one more thing. If you're writing something with a lot of action scenes, read comics. This it sounds like such a glib thing to say, but nobody cares about the actual advancement of the fight. They care about the hero moments. Those are the moments you want to give them. If you don't know which are the important parts of an action sequence to keep in, read comics. They're the ones that get drawn out.
Yes.
If you wouldn't draw a picture of it for the graphic novel version, your audience will not care about that motion when they're reading it in the story. That'll really help the pacing of your stories a lot. You can yada yada a lot of combat.
It's true.
Yeah, you can.
It's true. It's fantastic. Also, there ain't nothing wrong with cosplaying it out with friends and sticks. Whatever. Or cats. You know what? You can have a cat as your opponent. More on those details later. Anyway. So here we are at the end. And let's talk about next week. It's Excel tutorials, y'all. by reader request.
Y'all did this to yourselves. You asked for it, now suffer.
That's right. You asked for it, so we're doing it because, yeah, we are those kids you could dare do just about anything, and we're like, give it a try. So May 2nd, we're going to do Excel tutorials. We're not just going to talk about it. We're going to pull out the old Excel for this. I hope you're ready. Maniacal laughter. So if you have any requests Excel tutorial wise, be sure to let us know now so that we can figure out how to incorporate your request before Monday, preferably before this Wednesday. The rest of the month of May 9th, is basic photo editing tutorials. Again, you asked for this. You're getting it. And where we will be going over both Snapseed, probably Photoshop, and also, Tom, didn't you find something else you wanted to do? Did you find
Photopia?
some other app? What?
Photopia?
Sure, something. So be sure to get those in early. Any requests you have for tutorials or like questions or this is always my problem, how do I fix it kind of stuff, let us know now. May 16th, that is where you bring out your favorite writer tools and resources and everybody shares. It's a great big share fest. Everybody shares all their favorite writer tutorials, resources, software, techniques, whatever you got. It's time to bring them out and air them out for everybody else. Show them off. Make sure they get a little air. Let's see. May 23rd, we're going to talk about Tom's favorite writing enhancements. How to increase the reader enjoyment of reading a story by, as a writer, setting up all sorts of other, extraneous experiences for your readers. Super fun. And then May 30th, it's the big one. Writing games, and you can ask us anything at all. Anything. Preferably get those questions in early so that I have time. If I need to cite sources, I can actually have links for you. You can ask us anything about our personal lives, anything about our history, but also you could ask us just anything at all. Since Tom and I both are research reference librarians, and we will be happy to find.
What have you always wanted to know?
You would not
I'm
believe.
preparing all of my embarrassing questions.
You would not believe the trivia we know.
What questions were your parents never able to give you a satisfactory answer to?
Yes. Well, guess what? We didn't stop at that, and we just kept research till we finally found the answers. Because we probably had those same kind of questions. And Tom delightfully went through a 3-year period of your why phase. Oh my God. Boy, did you drive me nuts when you were a toddler. Why? This was like most of our conversations for 3 years. I just wanted to strangle him.
I believe it was part of what kept our father away from the house for 2 of those years.
Yeah, it was.
All of a sudden he found jobs doing delivery and other ways to stay out.
To not be home.
Yeah.
That's when he was working.
When I was home.
He got a job at Ingalls Shipyard on the coast during your Y phase just to avoid you.
Yeah.
So Mom and I had to deal with this.
And then he got a job doing pizza delivery, but only at nights.
Yeah, only when you weren't at daycare.
Yeah.
Never while you were at daycare.
Nope.
Just why? Why? And it got to the point at the end of that 3-year period, I started making stuff up, and often Tom was satisfied. And then the craziest thing happened. We grew older and found out I wasn't wrong. So yes, we all may be living in a bubble universe of my creation. Best of luck. So might as well ask your minor deity. See what you get. I don't know what to tell you. So that is the month of May. I hope you all will join us. We'd love to see you.
And if you like having conversations like that, starting in May, I am moving my Wednesday stream back over to YouTube, and we're bringing back Fantasy First Aid. Our first topic is going to be the distinction and difference between a place and a setting. Because this is something I see a lot of writers misunderstanding.
Yes.
So we're going to be talking about that. If you have anything along those lines that you would like to make sure that I cover, let me know.
Really, no judgment. It took me into my 20s, and I mean mid-20s, to finally grasp the difference between a building and an institution. Just because of the way most people use the term institution.
It's true.
Really confused my brain. So, I mean, it's understandable, this difficulty between place and setting.
Because one of the things that makes a lot of writers' work feel flat is it's filled with places and has no setting.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're going to be talking about that. If you feel like this is something that you are wanting to talk about, just let me know and I will send you an invite to be on screen. If you have an actual something that you would like for us to critique and show you how to evolve it from a place to a setting, you can also let me know and we will do that on the stream with you, because it's a lot of fun. And if not, I will come up with some really egregiously bad examples.
Before I forget, I would like to let everybody know, because I'm not good at self-promotion, Tom now is taking commissions on our coffee account, Glory Writes the Blues, for anyone who would like a tarot reading specifically for their shadow work process. So also, we are open to other kinds of commissions, or if you'd like other tarot work from Tom, tarot readings or whatever, like, is just one of these of, we put it up there because it is a skill that Tom has. Honestly, for a long time, we didn't think anybody would be interested in that sort of thing. But it is there if anybody is interested or needs further assistance with their shadow work. It is something that Tom excels at and has excelled at for more than 20 years. So, hey, it's out there. Just saying. Also, we do have memberships available where we post a lot of our stories first there before it goes out to the rest of the world, if we ever remember for it to go out to the rest of the world. Also, all our Vela stories will be put up on Coffee for international readers, since Vela is America only. So if it's something you're interested in, be sure to at least follow us on Coffee so that you know when there are updates. Throwing that out there. Anyway, thank you all for coming. We'll, if you're interested, we'll be over in the voice chat in the Discord server, Unicorn Council, after this over at the clubhouse. So come hang out. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye, baby.